Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whichever the case may be for all of you listening out there across the crazy planet Earth. Welcome to a brand new Vestiges After Dark. And I am your host, Bishop Brian Willett, coming to you live from the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains on this October 26, 2021. Tonight, we have our Halloween special for Season 4. And what a better way to celebrate this than with a fantastic topic and an amazing guest. We are very pleased to introduce to Vestiges After Dark our good friend, Danny Draven. He is a producer, director of numerous horror films, as well as other kinds of movies we'll be talking about tonight. But the subject matter is the dark archetypes. How does one capture the dark as an artist in terms of the visual arts, production, so much more. Stay tuned. We have a great show for you. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the special holiday edition, the Halloween edition of Vestiges After Dark. We wanted to do a special show for you tonight on, the dark archetypes. We've talked about them before with other guests, Eugenie Bondurant from the Conjuring films. We talked about how it was for her to act in such a despicable character and what it's like to bring such a character to life. But now we're doing it from the other side of the spectrum, the other side of the camera. And we're going to talk tonight about the amazing work that comes with producing movies and bringing movies to life, bringing these archetypes to life, bringing these dark experiences to life in a way that helps the viewer to experience the horror. I mean, that's what it's really all about when you think about it. I mean, it's about giving your audience an experience, and horror films are sort of like roller coasters, right? It's made to frighten us in a safe way. Some people, though, don't think horror movies are terribly safe because of the archetypal connections that they can produce, the reactions that they can sometimes have in people that can leave people unsettled. I know some people always ask me about they ask me if it's safe to watch paranormal television. I mean, I'm a part of paranormal television. So it's like if I say, no, it's not safe, I'm kind of like shooting myself in the foot. So why would I be on there if I didn't think it was safe? Well, I think the answer to that, and I've said this before, if it makes you feel uncomfortable, then maybe you shouldn't watch it, because really the risk involved in these things is about fear response. All right. So your fear is your liability. Your fear is what these things feed on. And if you're giving a lot of fear out, if you're exuding a lot of fear, well, then, yeah, you become a buffet to some of these darker, malicious entities, and you got to be careful. But I mean, if you can go to the movies and have good fun and see horror films for what they are, there's no harm in that. There's no danger in that. I love horror movies. They're my favorite genre. All right. My favorite movies of all time the Conjuring series is the new ones, but Poltergeist, Amityville Horror, these were like classic horror films, some of the best movies, and they really shaped who I was as a child. I saw these when I was young, and it kind of got stuck in my head, and I guess led me to the strange work that I do today, all the way up to hosting this paranormal radio show, podcast show. So, it is what it is. If that's risk, if that's danger, well, then I think that it can be fun. Just like a roller coaster. Okay. If it's being well maintained, there's no danger in the roller coaster. Roller coaster only becomes dangerous when it's not being properly maintained. And then maybe it's going to derail you and, you get decapitated or something. But, horror films don't have to be dangerous. Just, proceed with them and understand what they are. But there are dark archetypes, and they do actually work with dark archetypes, which can sometimes be, less than safe. And tonight's show is going to be all about that. But before we get into the meat and introduce you to our wonderful guest tonight and our good friend Danny Draven, I want to take a question from the ether. I always like to start the show off with one. And this one was kind of an interesting one, not really a paranormal question, but one that I get, again, enough that I think maybe we should answer it. And it's a very simple one, so we won't have to spend too much time on it. But this one is from Matt on Facebook. This came in through our The Exorcist Bishop page on Facebook. Facebook hasn't deleted me yet, so thank you, Facebook, for keeping me around, I guess. I'm gone from Twitter. Although we are simulcasting this broadcast tonight on Sister Mary Joan's Twitter account. So see, Twitter, you're not done with me yet. All right, you're not done with me yet, but you can still watch this show on Twitter through Sister Mary Joan's account. But Exorcist Bishop, it's history, it's gone. I could fight it, but I'm not going to. I'm happy to be off Twitter, to be honest. So it's gone. But the question came in from Facebook tonight, and that was actually it was probably a couple days ago, but from Matt, and he asked, Bishop, why is your chain always the one side of your suit jacket? So when you see me, you probably even saw it at the beginning of tonight's show. If you're watching on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Daily Motion, Twitch, anywhere that has the video for this podcast, you probably saw the initial picture of me in full uniform, clerical blacks is what we call them. And there's a chain, a silver chain that goes sort of across my chest. And people wonder what that is. Well, Catholic bishops typically wear their pectoral cross this way. That is actually my pectoral cross. And what it is we place the cross in the left shirt pocket. Okay, so when the coat, we put our suit coat over our shirt, it looks like the chain's going across. And the reason for that is not because it makes the chain look wonky or cool or something. We do that because it is a symbolic representation of keeping Christ over our heart. In the same spirit of putting your hand over your heart for the national anthem. It's something that Americans have done for a long time. Okay, so it's the same basic thing. It's to put Jesus close to your heart. So it goes across into your right pocket, and that's the way it's supposed to be worn. Now, it's funny because when I do television, sometimes the producers or the directors or whoever asks me to put the chain out so that the cross is visible. And it's like, well, I can do that, but Catholic bishops don't wear it this way. So if you're looking for authenticity, people that are in the know will wonder why it's like that. Now, there are some bishops that kind of wear the pectoral out, but typically the pectoral is worn out with a cassock or if they're not wearing a coat. So if you're doing it sort of informally as a bishop and you're taking your suit coat off, then you might wear the pectoral out. If you're in your cassock, you'll wear the pectoral out. Obviously, when you're celebrating liturgy or formal prayer services, you're in your cassock, so the pectoral crosses out. But when you're in clerical blacks, with your coat on, it's typically worn inside the pocket like that. So that answers hopefully the question. Hopefully, Matt, you're listening tonight. But that's that. Okay. If you got more questions about it, let me know. But I hope that answers it for you. But we have, as usual, an interesting show tonight. And it kind of is a continuation of the show from last season with Eugenie Bondurant from Conjuring 3, where we talked about the dark archetypes. But we were doing this from the actor's perspective. She's a fantastic, talented actor. If you saw Conjuring 3, you will agree she was the highlight of that show by far, she was captivating and did such a fantastic job. If you haven't listened to that episode, go back and listen to it. It's in the archives on YouTube. Just go to our YouTube channel, Nicolayan TV, and you can find it. So tonight's show's going to be a little bit of a continuation of that subject. But now we're going about it from the actual movie making side of it, not the acting side of it. Actors, as you know, have to take on these dark archetypes to sort of become convincingly evil when you're not evil, right? Actors are not typically evil people. I guess some of them might be. But, overall, they're just pretending to be an evil person or an evil creature or whatever it is, whatever's required of them with the role. And, that's kind of, they have to sort of capture that darkness, right? And they have to do it from within. Well, being a director, being a movie maker, a producer, you kind of have to do a lot of this, but in a larger spectrum. You have to have actors that can capture the look you want. You have to capture the essence of what you want. Each frame has to be sort of almost a work of art in itself. We see that with some fantastic movies. I think Stanley Kubrick was a amazing actor for being able to turn every image you see in the entire movie into what could be a still shot for a picture or a painting on your wall. I mean, that's kind of the way that it is when you're creating art. And this is art, and art can be dark. Art is supposed to reach in and capture the essence of our internal struggles, spiritually, philosophically, emotionally, psychologically. Horror films are great for this. And tonight's is all about that. But tonight we have Sister Mary Joan in the house. Hello, sister. How are you doing?
Good evening, everyone. In case you didn't see my new hoodie, the proper people
violates community standards. For those of you listening on Spreaker or iTunes or the audio only format for this show, Sister Mary Joan's shirt says "violating community standards." Is that sort of a statement for me getting kicked off of Twitter? Is that what this is?
It might be a statement to that particular platform. Yes, I'd like to thank Grunt Style for getting my new hoodie to me and within 5 days. So I had it for tonight. So there you go. That's all I'm going to say about it. Well, anyway, tonight should be awesome. I remember when we first met Danny at a Starbucks in Vegas.
We were at the Golden Nugget. We were sitting outside the Golden Nugget. Yeah.
Right. And this very thing came up, and he told us some pretty good stories, and I hope he repeats them tonight.
Well, that's why I wanted to have him on the show, because I think that now that, it's Halloween, it's kind of a good time of year for this sort of topic. And what better guest could we have for the Halloween special than someone that can really talk to us about this side of it? Because this is a very unique side. It's different. Like I said, it's different for the producer and director than it is for the actor. I mean, they very different roles, very different motivations. And in a lot of ways, there's a godlike quality, I think, to being a director and producer, because you're creating a world. You are the creator of that world. And you have to make
everybody's looking to you for direction.
Yes. So even though the actors are making it possible, it's still the producer and the director that actually manifests the world. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So it's going to be interesting, I think. And I'm really very, very happy, very pleased, very excited to introduce everyone to our guest tonight. So our guest is Danny Draven. He's an award-winning writer, director, and producer of primarily genre films and TV. After receiving his film degree from Emerson College, he moved to Hollywood and worked his way up through the ranks until he began producing and directing sci-fi horror films for independent genre studio Full Moon Pictures, which includes the Puppet Master series and Trancers, where he cut his teeth before starting his own production company. He has worked with and been mentored by Hollywood veterans and is also the author of 3 popular books on genre filmmaking. The Filmmaker's Book of the Dead, voted one of the best filmmaking books of all time by Book Authority, Genre Filmmaking, and Talk You to Death. His recent projects include producing the kids' Christmas fairy tale movie 3 Bears in 2019 and directing a new horror comedy, Ouija's Halloween Night for Full Moon Pictures as part of the Deadly 10 series of films, which was the first film in history to be entirely live streamed during the production. It was a winner at Film Threats Award, this 2020 show in Los Angeles. What a fantastic intro here. So we are very pleased to invite, for the first time, our good friend Danny Draven to Vestiges After Dark. How are you doing tonight, Danny?
Hey, I'm great. Thanks for having me tonight, guys. Good to see you again.
Yeah, great to see you too. Sporting the beard.
Yeah.
Sporting the beard. I know. I got a director's beard temporarily.
Yeah, it's very Steven Spielberg. I like it.
Yeah. Occasionally it comes back, and then I don't know if I like it or not, but sometimes I have it, sometimes I don't. So
I think it looks really good.
On you.
It looks good. It looks very good. Yeah, I think it really definitely puts you into the aura of your position. So
yeah,
I mean, and let's talk about that. All right. I mean, you have a extensive list. I mean, you go to Internet Movie Database and look at some of your filmography, and I mean, you going way back to, what is it, 1988.
Well,
you've been doing things.
Yeah, and IMDb isn't always the most accurate thing. Out of 88,
okay.
I think that's not a good one, but yeah, I've been doing it a very long time, and I've been very lucky to been mentored by a lot of now not of them are deceased now, but a lot of like classic Hollywood people who grew up in the Hollywood system. From a cinematographer who worked on Ingmar Bergman films. He was one of my first cinematographers on one of my first film. Learned a ton of stuff from him, and
wow.
And Criminal Minds. The executive producer was one of my mentors. I've been very blessed to be around a lot of people, both on the studio level, the television network level, and on the independent do-it-yourself level. So I've been very lucky to be around all these people for a very long time and to sort of learn my craft that way.
Yeah.
Because film school for me was pretty useless. I mean, I gotta say, I have a degree, in film and screenwriting.
Yeah.
But honestly, all the stuff, all the real true skills that I learned in this craft was not in school at all. It was definitely in the field and just making movies.
I think that's true for a lot of professions. I know that as being a priest, there's a very extensive focus on academics, but really the art, the meat and potatoes of being a priest or a bishop or a clergyman is found in the mentorship. It's really not in the classroom. Classroom might give you sort of the background for why you do the things that you do, and some of it you remember and a lot of it you don't. But as far as being effective in the world, in the field, helping people and doing the things that are required of you, that all comes from mentorship. It comes from actually practicing. And I imagine it's the same for you. It makes sense to me that you would say that.
Yeah, it sure is. And I mean, filmmaking is one of those art forms where it's not a solitary art form, like say painting, where you could kind of sit in your room and you're kind of with yourself and your paint, filmmaking, being a director in particular too, it's kind of a conglomerate, it's all these different art forms coming together and making one vision. And, and that's screenwriting, that's production design, that's editing, that's post sound mixing, that's all these different crafts coming together as one. So, and the director, of course, just kind of being the captain of the ship and steering all that towards their vision. But, but mentorship is extremely important if you ever wanted to get into the field of filmmaking. It's, not something that I see a lot of people have asked me before, like, should I go to film school or should I not go to film school? My answer to them is always, no, is usually my answer. I would suggest, it depends on what you want to do. If you wanted to be a producer, director, actor, depends. But I would say if you were pursuing the artistic side of it, I always suggest, like, using that money to make your first film, to actually go out and get it done. Because, I've seen a lot of people waste a lot of money on school, and they come out with a 4-year degree. But I've hired people on my sets that had PhDs from UCLA.
Yeah.
And they were doing grip work for me, so, and I'm doing independent productions, and they're like, but I got a PhD in cinema from one of the best film schools, out there. And I'm like, so, can you bring me a tweenie, and do they know what to do on a film set? And they don't. That's why they're there.
Yeah.
That piece of paper on the wall doesn't mean anything. You got to have OJT. Job training.
Way too overeducated, in the point where there's no practical experience. And when they get on a movie set, you can sit there and write a thesis about it, or compare, compare Hitchcock to somebody and write a whole paper on it. But when they get on set, it's just like, you don't understand some of the basics and how it works. And the other thing that really cracks a lot of people is the sheer stress that you're under when you're making a film. It's not all just, hey, it's all easy going.
It looks like a very glamorous job, but when you're doing the work
with you, I can't imagine the responsibility hanging over your head.
Yeah, it's a lot. And it's constant problems. There's always a problem. Like every 2 seconds, there's the AD's yelling in my ear, oh, so-and-so, you can't shoot that way. Because, people just walking their shot, or, oh no, we have to end 15 minutes earlier, or some actress is drunk, or somebody didn't show up, or somebody just OD, who knows? There's always something. So
anytime you're dealing with human beings.
Yeah. Anytime you're dealing with human beings. So, but when you're in my situation, when I'm making independent films, we're not working with $20 million and so what, everybody go home for the week. I mean, we're literally making feature films in 4 to 6 days. That's usually the amount of time that we make these. So I'm shooting 15, 16, 17 pages a day.
Yeah.
And these are generally 12 to 14 hour days, and so there's no time for screwing up. So a lot of times I'll rewrite stuff on the set. I'll cut stuff out on the set, things you could never do on a TV show like, say, Criminal Minds, where basically the writers run the show. They are the boss. The directors in television, the directors are like traffic cops. They don't really, the writers rule TV.
Yeah.
In the feature film world, the directors rule. So it's weird, how that works sometimes.
That's interesting. Yeah.
But it's always a constant struggle to get the film in the can. No matter what, on the indie level, it just has to be done so fast and very quickly, because there's no money to go back and reshoot. And we need 3 more days. Well, you got to go out and raise money for 3 more days because there's nothing left.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Actually, ask you about. Like as an artist, if your medium is oil painting, for example, or even music. You buy oil paints or canvases. I mean, I guess art supplies are relatively kind of expensive compared to other hobbies, but you spend so much money and you're able to produce the art. You sit there quietly and you produce it in your own time. You write music, unless you're writing for a particular project, typically, you're just sitting there at home with your equipment that you've probably invested some money into, and you produce your art. But when you're doing movies as your art form, I'd imagine that the budget becomes a frustrating factor of being able to realize your vision, because I'm sure just like every other thing in life, you never have enough money to do what you want to do.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. One of the hardest parts of even just getting a movie off the ground is really definitely the financing.
Yeah.
Definitely finding good material is always fun, but certainly the funding is one of the hardest things. But even harder than that is to, deliver something, something fun that on that budget level, too, because these things are, when you're making a movie in 4 days, or 5 days, there's just no time for, to rethink things. You're constantly on your feet having to read. So for instance, I made a lot of films, and every film has pretty much been like this, where we'll be doing, I mean, I'll have, I have a screenplay, obviously that what we're using is, basically a blueprint on the indie world, because we're constantly changing things, but things will go wrong. People won't show up, or they're an hour late. Well, there's no time to sit around and wait for it. So I'll cut them out of the scene. I'll figure out another way. I mean, I'm also a film editor as well. So I know how I can cut these people out or cut around it or what I need and shoot it in a certain way. But you're constantly having to figure these things out on set. And I think that's it took me some time to get used to doing that. I'd say if it was your first film, my first film, for instance, they threw me in with a bunch of pros and was just kind of like, you got, I don't know, 8 days to make this film. And I was just completely like, there's not enough time. There's like
sink or swim
and things. Yeah. It was a sink or swim situation.
Trial by fire. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you just, it was just definitely a sink or swim thing. And so many people sink, you get better every time you do it. And you just keep at it and you just keep making movies. And, but back to your question, yes, financing is the hardest part, and it's hard to keep it on budget and on track, because one of the mistakes I see a lot of indie filmmakers make too is that they have a certain vision when they go in, and if they don't get it, or if somebody says, hey man, you can't shoot in that location, it's not available today. I know I said it was available, but the lady showed up and found out that we're shooting a movie that for some reason they don't want us there. Okay, blah, blah, blah. So you need to shoot it here. and then the director needs to re-envision that whole scene, because now it's at a different location, a different thing, and you have to constantly make that work, because there's no time to say, let's take the time off, let's go find a new location, right. Maybe we'll shoot it next week. So
yeah, you don't get that luxury.
No.
So it's no question when you look at your background and everything, Danny, that horror has been your primary genre, the focus of the work that you do. What inspired you to go in that direction as opposed to maybe comedy or drama or something as your predominant area?
Well, you'll probably laugh when I say this, but believe it or not, horror is not my favorite genre. And in fact, one of the reasons I got into horror. I mean, I love horror. I like classic horror, particularly 80s horror, particularly. But one of the reasons I got into horror is that when you're going in through the non-studio system, generally you're going to go through the indie route. And horror has always been a genre that they make a lot of horror movies because they sell, because they're incredibly popular. They have sort of a built-in audience. People love horror movies. So it just kind of was by necessity that I hooked up with some people that were making these horror films, and I was already, of course, I was a fan. I wanted to make horror movies, but it wasn't like, oh my gosh, you got to make,
Yeah.
Like my whole life is making a horror film. It was kind of out of a way to kind of get into the film business by making horror films. And I did a lot of crap, jobs on set, working my way up through, being everything from, PAs to cinematographers and
paying your dues.
No, I've done everything.
Yeah.
So I kind of worked my way into it, and all that stuff was on horror. So every time I was a PA or a grip or whatever it was always in the horror genre. Generally, I may be mistaken. There might be one or two I'm missing, but so I think that was one of the ways it got into horror. But I've always had an interest in it, no doubt. And I think as I started directing in horror, the interest became even more so, because I wanted to do like more psychological horror, I think, than I'm not, believe it or not, I'm not a fan of like gore film.
Yeah.
Even though my
Freddy
films,
Krueger, that kind of thing.
I've made slashers. I've directed all kinds of weird movies with tons of gore. Actually, well, yeah, if I think back far enough, some really gory stuff. But I really don't like gore. I like the psychological stuff, and I tend to lean more towards that. And I particularly don't like the sort of what's the genre? These sort of like they call it torture. These like torture movies.
Saw.
Yeah, Saw. Things where they're like locked in a
Too
thing.
much for me. Yeah.
Where they're taking their teeth out and they're hanging them upside down. I hate that stuff. I do not like that stuff at all. No offense to anyone who likes that, but me personally, not my cup of tea. Never has been my cup of tea. But they continue to make it, and I think. Well,
at the end of the day, it's about entertainment. So if you don't find that entertaining, then why are you watching it, right?
But for me, it's borderline like a snuff movie or something.
Yes.
It's just. I don't see the enjoyment in that. I don't feel the if you go back to some of like the 80s and 70s horror, some of the stuff where it was more of an experience, it was more of a it was a funner type of horror. It was like you were there with popcorn and you're like, ooh, and you're like, no, he's over there, he's behind the, and things happen, but it wasn't, it didn't, it stayed off of the line of it being a little too real.
Friday the 13th comes to mind.
Yes.
It was scary, but kind of funny and
campy
at the same time.
Exactly. Yeah. But I think in horror, once you cross that line of it being a little too real and it being a little too like sickening or a little too like, hey man, this could, next time I go to the store, I could get killed. That could happen to me and it would happen exactly like that, and it gets a little too real. Whereas for me, it was always more about the fun. It was being fun, with it. And
kind of did that with Faces of Death. Remember that series?
Oh my God. Yeah.
Boy, I know the producer.
Do you really?
Yeah. It's
now some of it wasn't real, right? Now some of it was reenactment, but some of it was real, if I recall.
Some of it was. From what I understand, some of it was real.
Yeah.
When I saw a brief amount of it when I was like 25 years ago, I was like, what is this Faces of Death? I didn't even know what it was. Took it home, popped it in. And I was like, I just felt sick to my stomach. I couldn't even believe it. I shut it off and it was just, it's just something it's just stuff you felt like as soon as you watched it, you're just like, I shouldn't be watching this. This is weird. What is this? This isn't, I thought it was a horror movie. I thought like, ooh, it's like a Medusa creature that comes out and there's like, it's like Clash of the Titans or something. It was entertaining.
Yeah. I remember in school going to parties for Halloween and that would be part of the dare is to watch one of those Faces of Death films.
Yeah, they made several of them, but I do think
I was like, nope, I'll pass.
I do think they went a little, I think they got a little more fake as they went on. I think the original ones were the more real ones.
They were cobbling these videos together, and then they had some fake stuff in there. And the genre in general, horror in general, is a very exploitative genre. Yeah. And exploitation films have always been popular. You just look at the ones in the 70s, I'm still to this day surprised at all these exploitation films that you're still digging up and they're still finding the negatives for and retransferring them and putting them out on Blu-ray. I'm like, gosh, I didn't even know that was there. Between they've made so many of these for a very long time, and that's essentially what we still do today. You still make exploitation type films, and they just people like them, people watch them.
Isn't it interesting, though, that very rarely, if ever, I can't even think of one, maybe you probably are in a better position to maybe recall one, but the Academy never really gives an Oscar to a horror film, even a good one.
No, they gave it to William Friedkin for Best Director. I think, I don't know if that was for, the only horror film that ever won was... it didn't win Best Picture, but it won. They won awards like I couldn't recall off the top of my head, but there definitely is one in there.
There's one in there. Only one though.
Only one. Yeah, they like. You know what they like.
Yeah.
I don't think I have to tell anybody what the Academy likes. So,
they got their own agenda. I think.
Was it for like visual effects or something? FX
I think
it was.
They generally pawn them off. They generally give them to sort of like sound design or editing, and most people don't even know what that is or what.
A lot of the background stuff.
The background stuff, and even in the last year or two, which a lot of filmmakers were upset about. A lot of big Hollywood directors too are very upset about it, is they took awards for crafts like editing and sound design, stuff like that. And they took them off the Academy. They weren't going to put them on the TV portion of it anymore. They just sort of backdoored it. They were still going to give it to them, but they just didn't want to put it on TV. And I'm thinking, are you insane? That they just wanted to focus on all the glam, the actors and the best picture and all that. And I'm like, there would not be a picture without any of these folks. Yeah. And these guys are extremely, particularly everybody really, but I'm just speaking as an editor, particularly the editor. I mean, a movie dies with the editor, you could kill it, you could have a really good shot film. And if you got bad editing, you choose the wrong, the wrong take, or you edit it the wrong way, or the sequence. I mean, there's a million ways that a scene can be cut together. And, they always say movies are made in these different stages. And it's usually, it's the idea, the initial concept, the premise, what you want to make, and then there's the prep for it all, the envisioning, the vision, and then there's the production. And then there's the post-production, which is that stage where you kind of put it all together nowadays digitally, and effects and editing and music and all that stuff. And that's post-production. And then now color correction has even become part of that, more a part of that. And editing can really
make or break a film.
It can really make or break a film. It's a very important craft.
It's Star Trek Nemesis, the last Star Trek movie with the Next Generation before they went into the J.J. Abrams era of Star Trek. But that movie was basically remembered by Star Trek fans as one of the worst movies of Star Trek history because, and if you really understand what went on there, you'll find that it was the editing. They actually cut out something like 45 minutes of the movie. And those 45 minutes that were cut really pretty much explained about 5 serious plot holes that rendered the story almost nonsensical, particularly for long-term fans who were following these characters since the 1980s. And then watching this movie that pretty much some things just didn't make sense unless you had those scenes that were cut. Now, if you ever catch the deleted scenes, and as far as I know, they're only available on YouTube, and I've seen them, it's like, oh my God, now I get it. It's like all these years, and it was because it was edited out and it was edited poorly. So I understand exactly what you're saying, how that's such an important role in movie making. Yeah,
absolutely. And you can also, and even you can ruin performances too, acting performances. I mean, especially if you have a director who doesn't really understand acting anyway, because a lot of them, believe it or not, a lot of them don't. A lot of them, I've been around a lot of directors, including major television shows that where they give the actor a chance to direct, and it's more of a glamour directing spot really, but they're not. They know how to act. They know acting, but they're not. They lack a certain understanding of the process to really control it and make it what they want. It's just really strange. It's just like they just want to kind of sit in the chair and okay, not bad. But you could ask them hey, do you want me to put on you want a 35 millimeter lens on the next shot or something? They'd just look at you like, hey, I don't know anything about lenses. I don't know. Ask the cinematographer. It's like, yeah, but then but other directors are very technical, and you have two kinds of directors really. You have the technical directors, who are very technical guys. They know everything and there is to know about cameras, lenses, tech, whatever. Yeah. But they know nothing about acting, nothing at all. They don't know the difference between if they're good acting, bad acting, or even if they're saying their lines one way or the other. Then you have the actor directors. And these are generally people who come from Stuart Gordon, who was one of my mentors. He's the director of Reanimator. It's a very, very famous.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
So Stuart and I were very good friends. And we made a movie together a long time ago called Deathbed. And he recently passed away about a year ago, but he, me and him were very good friends for a very long time. And he was an actor's director. he and I got along well because I knew a lot of the tech, and I wanted to learn more. This was 20 years ago, and I wanted to learn more about directing actors. And he came from a theater background in Chicago, so he was incredible with actors. So he gave me some books, and we were always together having lunches all the time. So anyway, I learned so much from Stuart about actors, and I think where I'm going with this is that, when you combine the technical side of filmmaking with with that, sort of understanding actor side of directing, you can really control what you do on screen really well. And it's an experience thing too. It's not like you read one book and all of a sudden you can talk to actors, because actors speak a different language than you do.
Yeah,
they really do. And if you're a director that understands how actors interpret things, when you say to what you say to them, you can't talk to an actor and be like, cut, say it again, but say it like this. And then you give him like a line reading or something. An actor will hate you forever. Yeah. But if you understand the actor's craft and how to speak to them in the right way, you'll be able to pull that performance out of them immediately. And they'll love you for it too, because you're speaking their language. Just like you wouldn't want somebody to, speak in a different language than what you're used to, and then have to translate that to what you think they might have meant. And then you do it again, thinking that you understood what they meant. And they think, no, that was terrible. Cut. No, don't do it like that. Do it like this. And it just goes on and on. Meanwhile, the clock is running, money's running out. Yeah. People are getting frustrated.
That makes sense, because if you know about both sides of the fence, those directors who were once actors like Ron Howard, I mean, look at the movies he put out back in the day.
Yeah.
There's definitely a benefit to doing it that way, for sure. It's the same thing, I think, with our respective careers too, Sister Mary Joan. It's like, as a priest, you have priests that seem to went into the job, but don't know like the first thing about how to relate to people pastorally. And they're very actually dysfunctional people, almost as if they went into the priesthood to run away from the world. And you do get that. I imagine it's the same thing with cops. You have cops that are really there to serve and protect, and then you get those that are just on a power trip. So there's a difference between, I think, career seeking and vocation. And it sounds like what you're talking about, Danny, is like there's people who are really like almost this is their calling. This is what they live and breathe this. So it's like there's something that's natural within them that is expressed through the art form that they are using on screen. Whereas other people are just, this is a job, and they're treating it like a job. And you can't treat art like a job. It doesn't work when you do that.
No, definitely not. Definitely can't treat art like a job. And I think, I mean, I think if you're going to get into filmmaking, you really have to, I think what a lot of people, especially nowadays, I see is a lot of people they don't have a particular voice, I guess, that they want to get across, or I guess they just don't want to, they don't know what it is that they're trying to make. When I make a movie like Ouija's Halloween Night, okay?
Yeah. What is that all about?
Yes, I made it. It was a throwback to 80s movies called Ghoulies.
Yeah, I know that one. Yeah.
Well, same producer. I mean, it's same, so who's a good friend of mine, made tons of movies for him, Charles Band of Full Moon. So anyway, he directed the original Ghoulies and produced it, and he was the producer on this one. So he said, like when he first called me on the phone and said, "Hey, we're going to make these movies. I want you to do one or two of them, whatever." So I was like, okay. And he had this one in mind, and he said, "Hey, I have to because in my world it's about title. Usually, it starts with a title." So he's like, "It's called Halloween Night." And I go, "What?" And he goes, "Halloween Night. It's going to be this, the weed, but there has to be weed in it somewhere." And I'm like, "Man, I ain't making a weed movie, right?" I was so offended. Because I'm not a weed person. I don't smoke. I have no interest in making a weed movie at all.
Right.
So I was completely offended. Was like, no freaking way, And then I hung up, and I started thinking about it for a minute, and I was like, why am I even thinking about this? And I thought, if I took, so I kind of developed a little with the writer who was also kind of mad about it. I said, what if we took Ghoulies, and Ghoulies, and we just made a Ghoulies movie at Halloween in Las Vegas, and we just kind of backdoored the weed part in there a little bit, and we called it like Ouija board. We called it Ouija's, right? And so basically they have this little, it's this goofy looking Ouija. It's a Ouija board, but I said, guys, I don't want this looking like, and you guys know me, I don't want this looking like a real Ouija board. I don't want anything on set. Make it look goofy, put a weird head on it, just weed leaf, make it look like a Ouija board, but this is the weed G board.
Gotcha.
So anyway, and we had, so it was a total goof, and we had this thing, and then of course the kids, it's very classic horror thing where Halloween, they find this, or somebody gets them this board, they find it, they mess around with it, and these Ouijas come out, and they're basically like 2 foot high. They grumble, they growl. All they want to do is party, the whole boo, everything. They only got one night a year they can come out. And I said, they come out, they wreak havoc, they have fun. And at the end of the movie, they get defeated and they go back in their board. Simple, very classic. I'm interested. Sounds like fun. It's a dumb movie. It knows it's dumb, but it's a lot of fun and you have fun watching it. That's what we set out to do, and that's what we set out to make. And which I shot it in 5 days in Las Vegas. We rented the Artisan Hotel in Las Vegas.
Oh, did you? Okay, cool.
Shot the whole movie at the Artisan. We stayed at the Artisan when we were shooting it.
Oh, wow.
Pain in the butt to make.
Yeah.
Especially if you know anything about that hotel and what kind of parties they have there. And, it was not a particularly fun one to do. But anyway, so. That's kind of where
you can't go anywhere in Vegas without smelling, weed on the street. So I guess it's a good city for it too. yeah. It was a very strange.
Trust my first time in Vegas with the Bishop was my first time in Vegas, and weed being legal there, and coming from Georgia where it's still a misdemeanor up to an ounce and a felony after. I'm still active police officer. I'm sitting there going, yep. Okay. Yep. Not working.
Yeah.
Well, it's going to be sending off your little spidey sense, right? You got that little spidey sense from being a cop.
Oh, yeah. The spidey sense went crazy.
Yeah.
Well, Danny, it's interesting. We were called in to consult on Conjuring 3. For a few of their scenes, and they also asked me and Sister Mary Joan and Sister Maximilian to bless the set. It's something that has been a tradition for the Conjuring series since the first movie.
Yeah.
And so we went in there and did that. And when we stepped away with the producer, between the various tasks that they had for me. That day, we started talking about the previous movies and other things that had gone on. And it was interesting to me how many of the actors and other crew were very happy and relieved almost that not only, was an exorcist there to bless the set, but, we were giving out holy water to everybody who wanted it. And they had their own little bottle. And it was funny because you'd walk through the set even months later and everyone still had their holy water bottle. Some of them were like half empty. So they've been using it. So that's really cool. Yeah. But one of the things that they mentioned to me is that they've had paranormal experiences related to the movie.
Yeah.
Now, you got the Annabelle doll, right, as the kind of one of the focal points of that series. And they have many people, actors, crew members, reporting that doll has sort of gotten up and walked around and, been in places where it's not supposed to be, moved in places where, from like the bed to the chair and nobody's on set. No one would have been there to move it. It wasn't a prank or something like that. They have cameras, but no cameras were on to catch it, but they just know that this is not where it's supposed to be and nobody moved it. So on your movies, when you've been dealing with some of these dark archetypes, have you had experiences of a paranormal nature that you can't explain? So maybe talk about some of that, if you don't mind.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up because, there was one film. The one thing about making horror pictures is that you often find yourself in some of the most disgusting, rundown buildings with all kinds of dark history. And usually it's just because, it's a cool location. We want to shoot there. It looks creepy. We just have to light it and we shoot, we're very little production design. But, so yes, I've definitely had experiences like that. And I can talk about one movie in particular. There's this movie I made back when the paranormal movies were very popular, back when like Rec and all, Record and all that. What was the other one? Back when it was like, every time you would go to the video store, like you would constantly see like these new paranormal, like
Yes.
found footage was the genre.
Yes, I remember.
Blair Witch Project.
Yeah, Blair Witch. This was kind of post Blair Witch. It was kind of like a little after that, but
like Paranormal Activity kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So my friend Charlie, you know, he wanted to make a found footage film, and we were in Vegas with one of the executives from Redbox or one of these big companies, because this is how this works. And, you know, they somebody wanted to found like a found footage film. This is really hot. So we oftentimes in the world that I work in, movies are generally made to order. And what I mean by that is it's like if something's hot at that time, like at this particular one, it was found footage. Oh, you make a found footage film, we'll take 100,000 copies, you know, to Blockbuster Video or to whoever. So you make it, we'll buy it, you know, that kind of thing, where it was very like, hey, we got a buyer if we go out and make the film, as opposed to like, I want to make a movie about my childhood and about me going through a field of flowers for an hour and a half or something like that. And it's a vision and nobody buys it. Nobody's interested. Because that's, you know, when you make stuff like that, it's a very, very hard market.
Yeah.
So we wanted to make this film, found footage. I said, yeah, sure, I'll do it. Yeah, it sounds like fun. We shot at this place in East LA. And it's been on Ghost Adventures. In fact, I contacted Nick Groff to ask him about it. And he told me what room, you know, where some of the stuff happened, where he got attacked in one of those episodes. Yeah. I think it was one of the early episodes, but it was Linda Vista Hospital. That's the name.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I remember that.
Yeah.
So I shot at Linda Vista at least twice. I hate the place. It's, I wouldn't go in it by myself when we went to the Scout. I was like, man, I ain't going in there.
Yeah.
So I shot a whole movie there, you know, anyway, it was a found footage film, and I asked Nick about it, and I ended up putting my sound guy in that room, see if anything happened to him.
That wasn't very nice.
That's like Zach with Aaron, you know.
I said, yeah, go in there, read your paper, whatever, and I knew that was the room, but nothing happened. Anyway, so we shot the film there, and it was a very dark place. I don't know if you guys been there. Have you been to Linda Vista?
We haven't.
Okay.
I've heard of it. I vaguely remember the episode. It was a while back.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Yeah, any kind of rundown hospital. Yeah, you're gonna find some dark stuff there. It was.
I mean, they all the medical records were still in the vaults, and baby incubators everywhere. I mean, this place was just dressed forever, and it's where Freddy's boiler room is at, where they shot the original Nightmare on Elm Street, and we shot down there. So anyway, this place is very haunted, no doubt, without a doubt, and you can kind of feel it when you're there. But for me, what the things that were happening were things like I remember when we scouted the location initially. Like you were saying about the doll moving around, there was this teddy bear. It was a teddy bear that was there. And it moved at least 3 or 4 times since I was shooting there. First time I went there, I saw it. It was in front of there was like this chain door from the inside. There was this this little it was a kid's toy. It wasn't a doll, like, you know, like a baby doll or anything.
Right.
It was like a dog toy almost. You know, it was a little stuffed animal is what it was. I don't remember what kind. I think it was an elephant or something. But anyway, we were scouting a location, which for those of you out there, that's the process where the director, the production designer, a couple other people, you know, show up. And we scout, we go there during the day, we walk around, we start talking about where we're going to shoot things. Oh, I'm going to shoot this scene here and this scene here. We work out some of the logistics before we start shooting. That's what scouting is in filmmaking. Right. So anyway, we were scouting the location. And I saw this little stuffed animal by this door, and I looked at it, and it was sitting right in front of the door, and it was like perfectly placed right in front of this door, and I just looked at it like, oh, that's, you know, kind of creepy, but, you know, anybody could have kind of placed it there, and I didn't think much of it other than just kind of a creepy shot or something, you know. I was like, okay, that's kind of weird. It was almost like when a dog leaves a toy for you to play, kind of thing.
Right. Yeah.
That was the first time. Second time I saw it, we were shooting. It was like the first day of shooting or whatever. We were in a different part of the hospital. again, I think it was the maternity ward or something. There was a lot of like old hospital beds and incubators and stuff. Anyway, same damn stuffed animal in one of the beds that was kind of around we were shooting. I saw it. I was like, that's creepy. What the hell? That's the same thing I saw during the scout, and it's over there. It didn't think too much of it again. I think, okay, maybe somebody, whatever.
Yeah.
So the next time I saw it 3 times. And then the next time I saw it, I was directing just a few days later in another part of the hospital downstairs where the records room is at. Very creepy down there.
Yeah.
And I was looking down at the monitor, and you know, because we have the little monitor down there. I looking down the monitor, and to my right leg down near the monitor, that same damn stuffed animal was there again. And that's
would have drop kicked that thing clear across the room.
That's when it did. Yeah, I was like, see, I even got goosebumps.
Yeah.
That's when I was like, okay, all right, that's freaky. Let's finish this movie. I don't like this place. I got lightheaded in that place. I had to walk out a few times. I just got really sick. I got lightheaded. I walked out. I couldn't, I just didn't like the place at all. But anyway, I shot a whole movie there. So yeah, we had experience. Other crew members had experiences, I don't recall all of them. They made the movie like 5-6 years ago now, so I don't recall all of them, but I remember some other people had some issues. One guy quit because he just didn't want to go in,
Wow.
That's not really, he just was, I can't go in. I can't, I don't want to go in there. So, other people, some people love it, oh yeah, I hope something jumps on me, It's always the most annoying.
What you wish for.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Things like that were happening. So that was probably definitely one of the creepiest things.
Have you ever had things like that happen at just a studio where, it wasn't a haunted location where you're shooting, you were just shooting in a studio, but the archetypes themselves that you were playing with might've been dark. Did you ever have anything like that sort of spawn into existence?
The darkest things I've ever seen at studios are usually producers. But as far as paranormal, not so much at the studios as much, but definitely the locations, when you go out to some of these places that have these dark histories. I mean, I remember Trauma, I think it was Trauma, who makes like the Toxic Avenger series and stuff. They had a place.
Oh yeah.
They had a place. I remember because I worked with one of their guys, and Lloyd Kaufman and I know each other for a long time. And anyway, they had this place they rented out in LA, and it was their office. And it was, and I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Trauma has this little place in LA because they're New York based, and has a place in LA. And I asked the guy, I said, why'd you guys rent this place? He said, oh, we got it really cheap. I said, oh yeah, why'd you get it really cheap? Oh, this guy blew his brains out downstairs, and nobody wants to rent the place out, so they turned it into like their little office. And I'm like, man, yeah, and every time you'd go in there, and that place was just, you knew that there was a lot of bad things that went on in that place because it wasn't just that incident. Apparently, it had a long history of it. But
right.
It was right there in Hollywood, and it was just a ratty, dirty place that they. Yeah,
those kinds of places feed themselves with negativity.
Yeah, they really do. They really do.
They kind of do, yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, I would say like the set sometimes you can. You come across that kind of stuff, I guess, if it's like that. A lot of times we're out in the woods or something, not as much. I think you just creep yourself out more than anything out there. But definitely the Linda Vista one was one of the most memorable ones for me because I mean, we got MVP, some people were doing EVPs and they got captured some EVPs, and there was just a lot of dark history in that place. So, we dived into some of it, the little girl who died out front and all the gang violence because it's in a terrible part of Los Angeles.
Yeah.
East LA, you said, right?
East LA.
Yeah.
And the circumstances that the place closed down under.
Yeah.
And they converted it into a senior facility now. So.
Oh my.
Lovely.
Oh my goodness.
No,
I don't even want to comment on that.
They converted the whole thing now because we wanted to. Nick, I think Nick asked a few years ago, hey, did you know if anybody I could talk to? I said, well, I don't know. I don't think the guy was over there. And I said, last I heard, they converted it into a senior facility. And we were one of the last, I think the last film that was shooting there because they were already the old mental or the institution or whatever that was right across the street. They wouldn't let us shoot in it because they said, oh, they're renovating over there for condos or something. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me.
Wow.
So that's LA, I guess.
That's the way it is. Well, we are talking with Danny Draven about Dark archetypes in his work in producing and directing, as well as writing for films. We're going to take a short break here. We'll be back for another hour to talk more about his experiences on set with horror movies, as well as some of the other things he's done. Don't go away. Welcome back, everyone, to the second part of Vestiges After Dark. We are talking with Danny Draven about his work in filmmaking, particularly the dark films that he has done. Very interesting stuff. We've got more coming up for you in the second hour here. We'll be taking your questions, but we'd love to hear from you if you'd like to call in and talk to us directly or ask Danny a question. The number to call is 347-338-1860. That's 347-338-1860. Make sure you enter PIN number 1100999 to connect to the switchboard. International callers can call free on Eye of the Seer at Skype. Just Skype to Eye of the Seer, EYEOFTHESEER, and it's a free call to us. We'll take you on the air, take your questions, comments, stories. Don't go away. Well, Danny, I was thinking about when you were talking about how you would never allow anything real on your set. I was just thinking about how Steven Spielberg was known, or maybe it was even Tobe Hooper that put into Poltergeist the use of actual skeletons and skulls because they couldn't get a fabrication that looked real enough to Steven's satisfaction. So they just decided to get real bones. I guess they used props from, not props, but pieces from a biolab and put them into the movie. And I think the actors didn't know about it until after the fact. So they were kind of upset about that.
Until today.
Yeah.
That's disturbing.
But what do you think about that? I know that Poltergeist was known as being one of those movies that has sort of like a legendary curse.
It does, yeah.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that as a director?
Well, my thoughts on that as a director is
don't do it.
It's definitely don't do it.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, you're right. I mean, I don't like on my sets, I don't allow we'll do scenes sometimes, horror movies where people are, they're about to have a seance, or they have I remember there's long ages ago, they were doing these there's pentagram, and then they start doing the little candles, but it's movie making, it's just like, whatever, turn the light on. It's very not glamorous. So it's just, we don't even, but the little pentagram, little lights, and clada, and they say a few words that are totally nonsensical. And we just kind of make the scene, we didn't really do anything else with it. It's not like they're doing real anything.
Yeah.
But, still, that still always bothered me. I'm kind of like, yeah, we really need to do that. But, but today, I don't allow any of that kind of stuff on my set. I wouldn't do anything, remotely real. And even when I see it in the scripts, I usually take it out, or I make sure it's done in a way that's a goof, like Ouija's, where it's like completely ridiculous, where it's just like laughably dumb, and that's fine, whatever. But yeah, and generally, I think people that work with me will tell you that, I wouldn't allow any of that stuff on my set, and
it's becoming more common though, Danny. I mean, I know that in Conjuring 3, Eugenie, who plays the role of the occultist, it didn't make the movie. It was actually, this part of the film was rewritten to go in a different direction. But the part that I'm talking about, the original part was she had a sigil that was sort of like tattooed onto her hand. Of course, it wasn't a real tattoo, but it was made to look like one.
Right.
That was a real sigil. One of the actual demon that she was conjuring in the film. It's the actual sigil from the ancient grimoires that they used. That movie Hereditary did a very similar thing.
Yeah, that was weird. That movie was weird. I remember you telling me what happened to you and Sister Max in that movie too.
Yes, it was a bizarre. Danny, let me tell you, we went to that movie Hereditary. We did not know what it was about. We just had heard it was a real wild, dark horror film. So we thought, well, why the hell not? Let's go. So we went. And, here I am, exorcist with, it's sitting down, and we're watching the movie. And all of a sudden, I mean, it was not many people, but enough people in there. All of a sudden, a girl, maybe in her early 20s, about 2 rows in front of me, turns around to the woman who's behind her directly and starts screaming at the top of her lungs, "Will you get your feet off of my seat? They stink." And we thought it was funny at first because it was kind of a funny thing to just yell out in the middle of a movie. But then she started exhibiting all of the classic signs of demonic oppression and possession that we see when we come into a case for the first time, and the victim meets us for the first time and they overreact. I couldn't tell if it was my presence there combined with the fact that this movie had so much actual satanic imagery in it that was authentic, or what. But it was very bizarre behavior, and it was a weird experience for us.
Wow. Yeah. And that, I think you're onto something there, because definitely I've been noticing things that have probably been there all along, but definitely more recently is I think what I've noticed happening is there are, because filmmaking is a collaborative art form, a lot of times you're collaborating with so many different people from all different backgrounds and beliefs. And I've found even recently that some of the satanic imagery, or like you said, like a sigil, things would get worked. Like you would hire a production designer, you would hire an artist to do something for you and just say, "Hey, yeah, do this and this." But they somehow worked in this imagery. And then when I saw it, I'm like, why are you got pentagrams and you got these things? What is all this? And so I would have them like redo it and just take it out, even though sometimes I wouldn't even know what it is. I just looked at it and I'm like, I don't know. So, and then I found out later that, that person is like super involved in the occult. They're probably using real symbols in there, and if I didn't have any sort of knowledge about it, I could have just filmed it, whatever, it's on the screen.
Yeah.
But like you said, with that, with the tattoos and all that stuff, I think that's, I personally find that irresponsible. I would not do that personally. Look at what happened with The Exorcist when The Exorcist came out. That film was, everybody thought that film with the celluloid alone was possessed. But people were vomiting, and some of that was probably just marketing too. But
psychological response.
Psychological response, exactly. But it's a powerful film, no doubt. It's a disturbing film, no doubt. I know what you're saying, and I think you just have, as an artist, I think if you're hiring or you're working with other artists, and I think you just have to be very, very on top of what they're doing, and what they're or you'll hire like a makeup, or you get a makeup person or something, and then you'll see a monster design for the first time, and then you'll see all these symbols on their head. And I'm like, what is all that? And you're like, oh. And I'll tell you what they do, because I know this, is I called them on it a few times. I say, well, what is that symbol? Where did that come from? Oh yeah. And then they get like, booked they just get them off, Amazon. They open up a book on Satanism or demons or whatever, and they just see some cool symbol and they'll draw it on the dang monster.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you.
When you draw it, you're actually drawing it.
That's what I was wondering. Is it in ignorance? Is it just because a lot of people that are involved in movie making are not maybe spiritual or religious people, so they just don't take this stuff seriously, or is it because they're involved in the occult themselves? I guess it sounds like from what you're telling me, it's a little bit of both.
It's a little bit of both. Absolutely. I've met people, without a doubt, a lot of the people are involved in the occult. I remember there were people and I didn't even know it at the time, you know.
Yeah.
And I went over to this guy's house. There was this very talented artist of some kind. Anyway, I went over to their studio, and super nice guys, you know. And I met him through, I don't know, you know, the world is a very small one.
Yes.
So I met him, very, very, very nice. And I don't know, you know, if it's just me, I always have this like sense about people, and I don't know, something was a little off for me.
Right.
And then I went to the
Discernment,
studio.
Danny. It's discernment.
Discernment, maybe.
Yeah.
And I went to their studio, and I don't think I've ever told anybody this before. It's my therapy session right now.
There you go.
No. I went to their studio, and I was like, yeah, it's kind of a cool place. Just kind of a little, I don't know, just a little uncomfortable in here and stuff. And he had this area where, they had this giant rug, and they had it kind of set up like a, like a living room, you know, in an open warehouse kind of space. It was a warehouse type space. So it was a very open room with this giant rug, little couch, you know, little thingy. So, you know, oh yeah, come on in. We were talking or whatever. And so I went over to the area where the living room is. And as soon as I got on that rug, I felt just very strange. Mm-hmm. And I was like, this felt really weird to me. And I was looking around, and then you know, I knew that, I found out later that underneath that rug was a giant pentagram under that rug. It was a huge pentagram because they were both Satanists. They were practicing Satanists. Wow. And you know, doing their thing. And I guess that's where they held their things and
rituals,
rituals and all that stuff there.
So that residual energy got you.
Yeah, and all I knew is that, and again, the people were very personable. There was, like, you know, you think when you meet somebody that's involved in any sort of that, because you always think about movies, you're always thinking, oh, they're going to come out and they're going to look like,
no, a lot of them are just people too.
Right. Yeah. It's just people. No, and I have nothing personal against anything. It's just, we went there, and I just felt really strange when I was on the carpet, and I found out later that there was a pentagram there, and that's where they do their rituals there. And wow. Ever since then, I was like, I was just like, okay, that was the one that was very, very odd for me. And again, filmmakers, you know, they were filmmakers. And now could they have done a movie where, you know, they made a movie and they could have added a lot of that stuff into the imagery, into the visuals? Sure. Do I know that for a fact? No, but I see it a lot in movies. You see it in movies a lot, like you said. You see the tattoo, and you say, hey, that's like kind of, you know, that's real stuff. You know, what are you doing putting that in a film? I think if you capture it on film, I think I that's where I see the problem, where you're, as a filmmaker, if you're capturing that on film and you're exposing all these people to that, I see a problem with that. Yeah, personally.
I think if you do enough of these films with the dark archetypes and the just the darkness in general, the blood, the gore, the torture, the human suffering, after a while you get numb to it. And if you have the inclination, in the opening, if you don't have a faith to fall back on, whether it's Christianity or something else, I think you open yourself up to these things, and it can become kind of a regular thing for you. And that's how you start down the wrong path. Yeah. I totally believe that's what's happening in some of these cases.
I think a lot of it is about the sort of unthinking secularism that exists in the world. So, you know, people, like you said, you know, we're going to do this thing. So they get on Google and then look some images. You know,
it's been so normalized that they don't realize what they're dealing with could be very dangerous.
They're not plotting. They just think it's all nonsense. So,
yes, they do. Yes, they do.
Yeah, and so, it's all nonsense. So let's just get something that looks cool, you know. And whereas, you know, we don't think it's all nonsense. So,
no, because it's not.
It's not. Yeah. No.
Yeah, we all know that.
Father Chris,
sorry, go on.
Yeah, you've been in the chat room, and I know that there's been some questions coming in for Danny.
Yeah.
You know, is there any questions that you see that you'd like to bring up now, or maybe a question from your own mind that you have for Danny? Go right ahead.
Yeah, I've got some questions, but I'm going to start with one that I had, which is. Because it's interesting that, you know, the way you frame a lot of what you say. So this question is, have your experiences, you know, on sets and involved in this industry, have they made you more or less religious? Oh,
they've made me more religious. No, absolutely. I've had, I had experience, where I was personally attacked, and that converted me into being a Catholic. I am Catholic. I am devoutly Catholic, I would say.
That talk. That was pretty powerful discussion.
It was powerful enough for me to realize that, not that I didn't realize it before, but maybe it was just a reminder, that it was a life-changing experience. And again, it literally converted me. And I think my faith has just been strengthened ever since, with, praying the rosary every day, and things like that, just things that really strengthen. And it's funny is when I think about some of the horror films that I've done in the past, and then a lot of things like that, but and you think about actually kind of you're praying the rosary, and then you make these movies in the past. It's just kind of like, oh, okay, that's the same person. I certainly do. It strengthened it.
I don't see any discrepancy with that. I mean, it makes perfect sense that people who are religious are interested in religious archetypes.
Yes.
And that actually, one of the reasons I don't eschew these things is that for a very secularized world, it's kind of an evangelistic tool, to remind people that there are more things in this world than are dreamt of in your philosophy.
It is important to make that connection. I think that
things really do go bump in the night.
They really do, and if you're not involved in it like we are in the work that we do, you might miss it because the secular world's very distracting. Calling in from the 504 area code in what I believe is the New Orleans area in Louisiana. Hello, you're on the air.
Hello, this is Carrie.
Hello, Carrie.
Hey, Miss Carrie.
Welcome.
Hi, Carrie. I had a question from you on here, but it's best that you're asking it.
I figured I might as well just call in instead of. It's the same question. Absolutely. I was just going to decide to call in.
Good to hear from you.
So.
Yeah, we love when they call.
Danny.
Yes.
What is one topic you will not touch while making a horror film?
What a great question.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for asking. One topic I will not touch for making a horror film. That it's hard. It's a harder answer than I think, because there's actually a lot of topics that I wouldn't touch when making a horror film. I would say, I definitely don't. Oh man, that's harder.
Well, no snuff films. We know that one, right? No snuff films.
Yeah. No, I would say probably on the top of that list is definitely anything with that, like the Hostel type films, anything that's more in that very extreme torture kind of genre. I would not touch any of that with a 10-foot pole for me. Anything that's anything that I think that would do harm if someone was to watch it, like you're saying, Bryan, with having if I went into that intentionally knowing that I intentionally put some sort of symbolism in there, and this movie was meant to cause some sort of possession or cause you to change your mind about some, do some sort of a damage to it
when you have people to watch these films, right? When you have people to watch these films and it's very dark and violent, and you have someone that's already may have some kind of mental illness that they're dealing with, and they see this movie and it's popular, they begin to think that it's normal and that's okay. And there have been instances where people commit horrible acts of atrocities and even suicides from some of these films.
Yes.
Well, movies are powerful. They get into
being responsible.
Movies are very powerful.
They get into our heads,
There's a reason. Was it Kim Jong-un wrote a book on the propaganda, right. I mean, there's a lot of, stuff is so powerful. Media, our art form, filmmaking is an absolute powerful art form. You know it because you see Hollywood using it all the time for everything. So they know the power of the movies. nobody, I mean, I don't want to make generalizations here, but generally speaking, I think I could say not a lot of people are sitting around reading books, sitting around going, oh yeah, can I borrow your copy of, Republic or something? No, nobody's seems to have a lot of books anymore. I mean, me personally, I know you do too, but me personally,
speak for yourself.
I've got plenty too. Yeah.
Endless books. I love books. I couldn't have enough. I could barely even, I just love them so much. But from what I hear, I guess the new study is that what is it? We have the average person has like the attention span of a goldfish now or something. So
that doesn't surprise me.
I've actually I've had to cut films down because people don't have the attention span to sit through something that long. So we'd have to break up movies now where it's like, oh, it needs to be more like.
I've noticed that. I mean, I've watched a few Hitchcock movies recently and you're struck by, rewatch them and you're struck by how much longer they are. Like not just in terms of time, total time, but how much longer the plot takes to develop, and it's a marked difference between those things. But of course, the trade-off is that they get to develop their characters more. It develops suspense in a different way.
That's right. He was Hitchcock's my favorite director, period, of all time.
He's top up my list too.
The most studied filmmaker of all filmmakers for me, and the one you can learn. You don't need film. All you need to do is study Hitchcock. He had it. He knew it. He knew how to manipulate his audience. He knew how to get to their psychology. He knew how to tell a great story. He knew how to. I just love him so much. And
he's up. What did you think of Kubrick with particularly Shining?
Kubrick. I mean, again, he's a great master storyteller. I mean, I think he was a photographer before he was a filmmaker.
You can tell. You can tell by the way he you can tell by the movies.
Everything's a painting. I mean, the guy knew cinematography. He knew how to work with cinematographers. But his films are just, obviously The Shining is certainly a classic. But he one of his favorite books that I have that I've still been reading. It was called what was it called? Boy, it was it was called like The Rules of Enchantment or something like that. It was Enchantment was in the title. I wish I could think of it off the top of my head, but it was basically a book about fairy tales and those and how to sort of use those fairy tales and sort of repackage them into other stories and archetypes, I guess we're talking.
I was going to say using archetypes. We did have a question on that as well, so I might come back to that.
Sure, absolutely. No, and it's it's one of my favorite subjects. I love talking about archetypes. Yeah. Archetypes in films is so important. But Kubrick definitely understood that. Certainly Hitchcock, all the great master filmmakers understood that. But Kubrick, I know, really spent a lot of time in that and you every time you watch one of his movies, you see something else. The guy was a freaking genius when it came to that. I mean, he would hide things in the frame that, about, The Shining and the moon landing and all the stuff on the kid's T-shirt. And there's a million, there's a whole documentary about it, actually. There's a documentary about that. Yeah. Everything that Kubrick used to hide in his films.
Wasn't he a war photographer?
He was, if I remember right.
Yeah, because he filmed some of the stuff at Pearl Harbor. Some of the haunting images you see of Pearl Harbor was him.
Yeah,
he was very young back then. He was.
He is a master filmmaker, and he knew how to hide it and how to put he knew how to put imagery in his films that spoke to people on a subconscious level. Right. And I think that all the powerful films know how to do that. Hitchcock did it tremendously. And when I mean by that is I'm not talking about just like just like a little things here and there. I mean, color is one of the things that can have a psychological effect on you in films. Oh yeah. And certainly that's why I think color correction is such a great subject, cinematography too. But shooting a scene with a lot of red as opposed to a lot of blue, or can really make a difference. So it's a lot of different things,
Just the angle of the shot, the emotions on people's faces, like Full Metal Jacket to me.
So many. So many.
When that movie came out, it really spoke to me. It was just a powerful movie, and not kind of like Platoon was.
Yeah,
Well, I think that
grabs you by the face and makes you watch the horrors of war.
one of the challenges to getting people to really understand the power of cinema and the power of storytelling, which is something that's one of our most ancient activities. When you think about it, you think of like primitive man sitting around a fire, telling stories for the tribe. You're talking like there's a shamanic action that's taking place there. It's ritualistic. It's powerful. There's power in it, and it's carried on. Now our new fireplace chat is really kind of like the movies, and I guess it's the living room now, because now you can kind of stream movies right into your TV, into your high definition TV. Yeah. But one of the things that I think is one of the challenges is getting people to understand that these archetypes are a lot more real and sentient than I think most people give them credit for. When you just study Carl Jung, you think they're just psychological principles, but they're not. They're independent, sentient forces that do impact us in both positive and negative ways. I'm thinking about a most recent event. The movie Rust with Alec Baldwin had this recent tragedy where the story, as I understand it, is about an accidental killing, and what ends up happening on set is an accidental killing. It's like the archetypes are playing themselves out, not knowing the difference between what's fiction, reality. For them, it's all fiction. It's all storytelling. It's all, but for us, there's a line there between something that's fiction and something that's impactful in reality that causes tragedy, like what happened, where I guess the gun was loaded with some kind of live round when it shouldn't have been, and it ended up killing the set designer, the production designer, and then injuring the director. So I mean, what do you think about that, though? I mean, I know that Father Chris, you have a question about archetypes, so I guess that's a good lead-in for your question. But what are your thoughts, Danny, on archetypes being powerful enough to actually affect reality in that same kind of way?
Wow, I think
it's dangerous.
I think it's dangerous. No, I think it's dangerous. And I think the longer that I've been a filmmaker, the more I've realized that the archetypes or the stories you tell or the subjects you've chose or whatever can have an effect on people. So, I think it's just a matter of when you start to understand those archetypes and how to use some of the things like I was talking about, like color and angle and things like that, that you can approach your story that way and just try to do something really good with it, and maybe not the opposite. I'm not saying it's like this, like a bad and good side, but it's just, I mean, I think, and even as an editor, because, as an editor, I know for a fact, because I've done it, I know that I can take stuff, I can make people look bad, I can make them look good. I can make bad people look good people look bad, whatever, through the editing. You can give me the same thing, shot the same way, but through the magic of effects and the way it's cut and the way it's presented, we can totally make
you should so do a documentary on that very thing. Like shoot a short 7-minute, maybe 10-minute movie and edit it maybe 10 different ways and do the documentary and show people just how you could tell a comedy, a tragedy, a horror, all these different genres.
How you can ruin an actor's career.
Yeah, how you can ruin an actor's career. That'd be interesting to watch.
It would actually. It would. I don't think people realize. I mean, you see it all the time in the news and the media and social media and everything, the way things are edited and presented. It's the same thing, but it's movies instead, and it's all hidden in all the big movies and everything. It's all layered in. People just don't realize it, but we
take it for granted.
It's a powerful art form. And I just think that with that power, and understanding how it works, that I think there's a little bit of responsibility. I'm not saying you need to be a saint about it, but I think there's a little bit of a responsibility with that.
Yeah.
And that's why I personally won't touch certain subjects, or I won't do certain kinds of films. I like movies that are entertaining. They're just fun for me to sit down, goof, laugh. That was dumb or whatever. That was, my kind of fun movie stuff. But when it gets a little more serious, I take it a little more seriously, depending on what it is. But and again, certain subjects that I just is like, I don't think we need to know about this, or I don't think there needs to be. I don't think we need to show this. There's so, and now it's all about showing everything. You see the stuff they showing on TV or showing on network television.
Right. And you're like, oh dear.
Why are we going this far with this stuff? I mean, and you watch Hitchcock and you're like,
shock value.
He knew that there's nothing scarier than a closed door, and he understood it because he was a master. He was just a master filmmaker, a master of suspense.
Yeah, it's much more frightening to what you can't see. I always find horror movies kind of ruin it for me when you get to see the creature. It's much better when you can't see the creature.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and you know.
But it requires someone to have some intelligence to do that. I mean, it's easy to do kind of shock film, isn't it? I was only because I was it's been remastered, so I'm watching Brideshead Revisited again, which is very English of me, I know. And I did live in Oxford for a long time. But yeah, I was reflecting on it, because it obviously it portrays an intimate relationship between two men. I mean, this is the Evelyn Waugh novel, and it's put to film. And there's two things that happen in that I don't think would happen anymore. One is that instead of some screenwriter thinking, I can write this better than Evelyn Waugh, they actually have long narrations from the text, because Evelyn Waugh's a very good writer. So that's one thing. It's actually, it makes it all the better. But the second thing is there's this long and intimate relationship over, I think it's 11 episodes of 100 minutes each. Okay. But there's no explicit gay sex scene between these two characters. It's so much deeper than that. It's more intelligent. It's and actually all the richer for it, because it actually draws people into a relationship. Whereas I think today they just go for the shock
showing
value.
full on, even if it's guys and gals having sex on film. It's actually. It makes the film more classy and more endearing to maybe show them closing the bedroom door behind them, and then show them.
It's actually less sexy. The more explicit it is.
It's just more classy to me. It's more. It makes the film more,
But I think that's it's hard. I've had producers tell me, man. I had a producer tell me one time. He said, "I'm paying her to take her clothes off. You better have her take her clothes off." I'm like, you can't believe the conversations that I've been in my life, man, with producers. And I say, "She's supposed to take off not only the top and the bottom, because I paid for both of them and make sure she does it." I'm like, "Man, I ain't doing that. What are you talking about? You can tell. I ain't gonna."
We made her work out for 6 months and eat, lettuce.
It's just the most. It's stuff you would never think people would even talk to. If I was a kid and you told me that someday I'm going to be having some of these conversations on set like this, or like, "Hey, your actress, she's, she just, we gave her money and she went and she bought vodka and she's puking all over the place now, and she's passed out and we got to call the police because she's on drugs or something, stuff like that,
Yeah.
You're just kind of like,
wow.
You just can't believe that you're in that problem. I'm just making a movie. Why am I now in this problem and her problem and his problem? It's just the strangest thing.
I see so many parallels with ministry. I know, Bishop Bryan, you were making some earlier on.
Yeah.
But I was reflecting on, you talked about priests. I'm going to bring this back to film, but you talk about priests. I think a lot of the time, a lot of priests have no idea what they are, who they, what a priest is. But it's also
into it too young. You have no life experience to bring into the ministry.
That
How are you
can
supposed
be
to
a
relate
problem.
to people?
Although there are lots of older people that have had the same experience over and over, they've not actually developed at all. But I think one of the problems is, and it sounds a little bit like being a director, is that you end up you think, well, what is the job? And it's kind of, well, you got to be Christ-like, but you're also a sinner. You got to teach people, but you've also got to learn. Like, you have to be a pastor, but you're also someone's son, and so like
a tightrope walk.
Yeah, you're a counselor as well as a corrector. It's an impossible sort of task. But I was also bringing it back to film, thinking about liturgy. That. And because you're a Catholic, it's easier to talk about this. I mean, the purpose of liturgy is to obviously worship God, but to do it in a ritualistic way, a way that takes you on a journey. And so there's so many parallels there with movies where you're trying to create an atmosphere. But I guess one of the distinctives I would suggest is that when you're making a movie, that's you're being paid, and everyone's bought into the fact that we want to be manipulated by this environment. So you've kind of got a freer reign to do that. Whereas obviously in the liturgy, what we're trying to do is fulfill an archetype of sacrifice and praise to God.
Like we call it, in movies, the suspension of disbelief. You're allowing the audience allows you that like, okay, I'm here and I'm willing to forget reality for a while and suspend that disbelief. Entertain me, and I think I mean, from what I've seen on network TV and some of the explicit stuff, and I just can't believe it, man. I just it's really crazy, but they it comes from a higher executive level usually, down.
Oh, it's also come from the culture though, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
People, actors and actresses are more willing to have sex on TV because actually men and women are more willing to have sex by meeting on an app.
But it's interesting, Father. It's interesting that you do see that, there's people will not bat an eyelash going to see a movie that has a lot of graphic sexual activity in it and scenes that are very graphic and leaves nothing to the imagination. And they won't bat an eyelash, but if you saw two people doing that on a park bench somewhere, they would have they would have a conniption. I mean, they wouldn't be able to, you run over there and be like, get a room, but yet when it's on the theater and the screen, it's beautiful.
I have a funny, just a little thing to add to that. I don't know if your audience might find this a little entertaining, but so that movie I told you about, the Ouija's Halloween Night, right?
Yeah.
So so generally these movies, one of these sort of requirements is some sort of nudity in it, whether it's just a quick thing, because it's just they're some of them are kind of a little exploitative. So you got to, they're horror movies. You get a quick little shower shot or whatever.
Well, it's like Airplane. Remember Airplane in the 80s where they'd be on the plane and and then all of a sudden there'd be like these breasts flapping around and then it's like one scene, like a couple seconds and it's over. It's like, why was that in there? But they had to throw it in.
There's a great English comedian called Peter Kay, and he'd say that's something for dads.
But it's almost like, the producer will come in and say, hey, you got to put that in there somewhere, whatever. And they'll literally, they are your boss as a director. They're the boss. And I'm like,
they're paying.
So what happened was, I actually on that film in particular, I think they thought that I was going to make like kind of a really R-rated, super like, tons of party and tons of nudity everywhere. So I ended up, me and the writer kind of sneakily kind of worked it around. We wanted to do something a little more PG-13. And I said, I don't want any nudity in this. I don't want anybody smoking weed in this movie. I don't want to, I told him specifically, I said, I don't want to promote it in the film. I don't want people smoking it. I said, the only thing I want in the film is that they dabbled in it and bad stuff happened and they learned not to do it. So they had to put them all back in the board. End of movie. So I didn't want and he was like, okay. So I said like the opposite of what some of these other ones would do. Yeah. So anyway, so I made this film and not one nudity, there's no nudity in it whatsoever. And I said, and there's some dancing or some things, but there's no nudity in it. And so the producer watched it, and same guy, because they hired a girl to come out, and he said, okay, she has to be in that scene, because there was a scene where the little creature gets, she comes out of the shower and it attacks her, and of course there's nudity in that scene. And I was like, man, I don't want to shoot that. I'm not going to shoot that. So I said, I'm not going to shoot. So I ended up kind of going over that day anyway. And I was like, we're going to have to cut it out. Actually, there was 2 nudity scenes in the scene, and the other girl, I cut her out too. So, we cut it out of the film. And, I think when he saw the film, he goes, oh, this movie was great. It was pretty. I haven't had a movie like this for ages. He loved the film. He said, it's like a PG-13, like almost like a Gremlins or something, but not too hard. And he's like, you didn't put any nudity in this at all. He's like, I didn't really miss it all that much, but it would have been nice to have just a little bit, but that's okay. And I was like, whatever, man, because I'm trying to tell you, you don't need to put the nudity in the film to have.
Just give him a Polaroid with his copy.
Yeah, I know. So, and believe me, you wouldn't have wanted the nudity in the film. So it was, but it's like you don't need it in the film. And when you start needing it in the film, you probably shouldn't be making the film anyway, because you should just concentrate more on.
It's probably not there. The script isn't there. Yeah.
Well, the scripts on these movies, the scripts are probably really never there, honestly. but the entertainment value is there, and I think the people that sit down and look, if you're going to sit down and you're going to watch a movie called Ouija's Halloween Night, you're not expecting, Full Metal Jacket. You know what I mean? You're going to sit there and you're expecting to be entertained, to just laugh.
It's not Shakespeare.
Tune out and just enjoy the show.
Tune out, eat your juji fruits or whatever, and just have a good time on Halloween, because people love to watch it on Halloween. I get all these people that are like, it was stupid and fun, and we had fun.
It's so good to hear a director talk about movies being fun.
Yeah,
it's refreshing. Yeah, and because actually one of the things I wondered was whether you've had any experience with the current wave of sort of cancel culture, and you can't do this and you can't do that, and I don't know. I mean, how directed does the director feel these days?
Definitely take away from the fun of the film.
Well,
that's a good question.
You have to walk on eggshells.
You being the walk on eggshell stuff. Well, honestly, I mean. I think if you're working at the studio level, sure, yeah, you're going to get it. I was there. I saw exactly how it works in the network television world, and how I realized very quickly that, I'm probably not going to be directing TV. So it's.
Well, you've been in the independent for how long? How long have you been doing independent film?
Oh, over 20 years.
Okay,
20
so
years.
You've been doing that a long time.
No, I've been doing it a long time. So if you want to make a film where where you just want to do your thing, what you don't need to walk on eggshells or whatever you want to do, and just make your vision, and don't worry about being canceled or whatever it is these days. The indie space is probably a good space for you. But where that is getting a little more dangerous with free speech now is that the distribution platforms are starting to be like, with the indie stuff, are starting to be like, oh, what's in that film? Oh, well, we don't want that on our platform. Well, if you're not on that platform, then now the distribution, that's really happening. They'll throw you off for the dumbest thing, or your artwork has. I know one company that, their artwork has always been, it's like been very revealing artwork, very exploitative artwork, where it's like, the girl screaming, but she's like in a nightgown, and you get a little nipple maybe over the side,
right.
And it's like, whoa, that's too much, and then they throw them off the platform for it or something,
Yeah.
So there's a censorship going on, but
it's a weird kind of censorship, isn't it?
It is a very weird kind of censorship, and I think as an artist, and as anybody who wants to express any sort of a voice out there, or artistic vision whatsoever, I mean, the censorship is starting to is out there, and you think, well, I'll just do my own thing, my own way. Well, don't be surprised if a distributor comes back and says, yeah, we loved your film, but that little area there, cut all that out, and then we could probably take it on and get it on the platform. So it's
that's horrible. It's taken away from your artistic vision, and it can make the movie. A movie could be a real good movie, real good plot, and then it turns to shit because you're being censored on certain subjects.
Yes. Yep.
And I've seen that in some of these blockbuster films today. I'd much rather watch a Logan's Run from the 70s than some of the stuff that they put out now.
Yeah.
Surely the market's going to kick in though at some point, isn't it? Sure. I mean, I know that there's big stakeholders that control, the big ones, Netflix and what have you, but
Amazon.
But surely, how often does it have to occur that a film is released, it gets absolutely hammered by critics, 30% on Rotten Tomatoes, and then is an absolute smash at the box office.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Love it. And similarly, the ones that get, they've got all the right woke credentials, and so they get 98% Rotten Tomatoes, and no one goes to watch it.
Yes.
I mean, at what point does the market come and say, no one likes this, it sucks?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because they even got people on camera saying it, because they know damn well that those movies that are the award winners and the ones that everybody, it's kind of like, you get a very small audience. They know that those movies are being funded by the ones, the horror pictures and the ones that everybody's like, that movie, that movie.
Sharknado.
Yeah. All the Jesus. Those movies, at least, I mean, the studio stuff, those movies are funding all the ones that nobody, are really like, ones about like, oh gosh, you just take your pick from some Academy archived movie or some kind.
Well, I only look at the Academy Awards to know what not to watch.
Me too.
I know that they will be garbage, and there's no point watching.
Well, again, my favorite films are horror films, so I mean, the Academy excludes people like me. I mean,
they loathe. There's a certain. There's definitely a certain amount of elitism there when it comes. I know people who are in the Academy, and they tell me how they got in, but they got in a different era though. It wasn't the sort of woke era that we're in now, but it was more. They got in because of their accomplishments then, and they're having directed theatrical and their experience, and then the Academy has to invite you to be you just don't like fill out an application and hope you get in. Right. They have to invite you. So they were invited.
It's like a secret society.
Yeah, it's like a little. Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, it's like it's like
very Masonish.
Yeah,
I think it's like Eyes Wide Shut or something.
It is.
But it's
my hope though is that the market kicks in, and actually, countries like Hungary that are taking a stand against this sort of nonsense, and in the world, there'll be the places where they say, bring your Hollywood. Anyone that Hollywood's rejected, come here.
Yeah.
Make movies here. We'll have an industry here. If Hollywood wants to give it away, we'll take it. Yeah. And by the way, we'll charge you far less corporation tax.
Yeah. Right.
So my hope is that happens, but the problem is it is a slow process, and those stakeholders aren't going to give it up easily.
No, you got it. You got to. We do need to. It's a problem, man, and it needs to be. I mean, I just think of some of these filmmakers back in the 80s and 70s and particularly the 60s, and all the stuff that they were making then, and then now trying to make something where you have a certain vision, and it getting censored.
You gotta go, yeah.
And the checklist. I mean, and the thing is, like I said, it's like
quotas.
It's like if you don't meet a certain thing, and it's like, well, no, but I just want to make my movie, and I don't want to do all this stuff. Well, good for you, go do that, but when it comes to the distribution, when it's time to get it out into the world, don't be surprised if the distributor says, your movie's just a little too this, a little too that. Maybe you could cut this out, cut this down. You should have had more of this. You should have had more of that. It's always that. And then maybe we could have got it on more platforms for you. Or maybe we could have got you a bigger release. Otherwise, it's just going to end up on, some stream. Well, you can't, not that it would end up on YouTube, because YouTube will take it off if it doesn't meet their community guidelines, which we all know is very strict. So
yeah, I'm surprised I'm still here, to be honest.
I'm amazed.
There's a censorship going on, and I think it's something that the filmmakers really should take very seriously, because we all might be making very woke films soon if you don't get those get some sort of a platform where you can have your vision. You don't have to agree with it. That's not the point. The point is that freedom of artistic interpretation, artistic vision, artistic and for those movies to be available for whoever wants to watch that. So otherwise you're just going to get on Netflix. You can see it look, let me tell you something. When Netflix first started, I was still making movies when Netflix first started. Netflix came out, we were like, what the hell is Netflix? Right? Now they're a major studio. When they first came out, us indies were like, they do what? They you can order it and then the DVD comes to your house.
I remember that.
I remember
that's kind of cool, because I had movies that came out in Blockbuster back in the day. Blockbuster, Hollywood, that was our market. But with Netflix, we're like, what the hell? What? So when they started, we were making movies that we knew we could sell to Netflix. They would buy them on spindles. So we would make like an indie horror film for like say $35,000, and they would place an order, and we would deliver them to Netflix on a like a spindle. They didn't want the artwork, like the artwork and sleeves and cases. It would just be like a spindle of 200 DVDs that they'd give to them, and then it went into their catalog, and then they would mail them. People would rent them, and then slowly, as they became bigger and bigger and bigger, I don't know if some of the people listening can see this as well. Maybe you guys can too. That a lot of the indies films started to get expunged off the platform. They just were no more.
Yeah, I was on it from near the start, and I noticed that.
Yeah.
They were just gone, and my films included. I mean, they were on there. They were probably paying their bills for a long time, and then as they started to become bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and started, of course, making their own films. Man, the sort of lower independent stuff
there's a lot of foreign film influx now in Netflix. I've noticed a lot of stuff from overseas being sent
more and
Netflix
more
instead
now.
of
You're
local
seeing
content.
that.
Amazon too, by the way. Amazon, same thing.
Well, I think the French film industry has been a bulwark. It pains me as an Englishman to speak for France, but I think the French film industry has been a bulwark against a lot of this stuff because, and it's not an accident. It's because French people have to do philosophy at school till they're 18. Mm-hmm. So they're far less vulnerable to this kind of nonsense creeping in. I'm just amazed that in America that actually has a First Amendment. This has become the sort of.
But see, you have to honor the First Amendment first, Father, for it to make any difference. You know, I mean, I'm looking at what
colonial power. You know, we don't have free speech, but it appears we're freer these days than Americans.
I don't think they want the free speech
like
anymore.
The film industry is developing its own dark archetype.
Well,
as far as only allowing certain things to be seen.
Yeah.
And that's not healthy for anybody.
Right. And especially if you, I mean, you know, I don't know if you. It's sad when you think, like, when I heard that statistic about the goldfish, I was like, is it really that bad? I was like, oh my gosh, is it really? And then I'm like, you know, it might be. So I think if you have, I don't know if you have a population or you have a group of people who are watching this stuff and they're really that, I guess, vulnerable, or that's
I think there's a certain emotional and psychological fragility is what it really comes back down to. And I think that the problem is we have created younger generations that are too fragile, honestly. And I know it's such a cliche, you know, for these older generations like us to look down on younger generations and say,
but that's a whole other show.
But the fact of the matter is
just
it is an issue, and it is something that I think is at play in the world today right now. But we are, again, talking with Danny Draven, Father Chris, and Sister Mary Joan about the dark archetype of censorship, perhaps. We'll be right back after this. Don't go away. Welcome back, everyone, to the third and final hour of Vestiges After Dark. We're talking with Danny Draven about his work in filmmaking. Fascinating subject so far, gone in many different directions. When we come back, we'll be taking more of your questions from the chat room, as well as anyone who would like to call into the show at 347-338-1860. That's 347-338-1860. Enter PIN number 1100999. If you are international, you can call free on Skype to Eye of the Seer. We'll take you on the air. Don't go away. Well, Danny, we've been talking so much about all of those dark archetypes and everything else, and the horror movies that you have produced, the numerous ones that you've directed, and even some that you participated in writing. I'm curious, Three Bears Christmas, one of your more recent ones, such a different direction. How was that? Like, what's it like working on a movie with completely, like the complete opposite archetype as the ones that you used to working with?
Well, I'm not all horror, So I actually try to get involved in a lot of non-horror projects.
Well, I remember when we came out to Vegas to see you last time, you were really excited about this project.
It was, we shot it in Ohio, and it was actually it was a film that I was involved as a producer on. My friend directed it and produced it, and I came on as a producer, and I went with them to Ohio, and it's basically it's a total kids movie, and it's a bunch of it's like it's just they're in full like animal suits. Yeah, the whole thing, talking, the whole thing. So,
what was that like?
Funny enough, he came from a lot of horror background too. So
yeah,
it was different. It was fun. I had fun. I had fun making it. It's definitely fun working on set, and we had kid actors on that one too. We had they're really talented. The little girl, and a couple of them played squirrels and everything. So seeing them getting to make up and be little actresses and actors and things like that was pretty cool. A lot of them, it was their local hire, so they were all like Ohio kids. So it was really cool getting to see that. No, it was fun to make, but yeah, totally different than. Funny enough, all the makeup was done by horror guys. So we were at Robert Kurtzman's studio. He's a big makeup effects guy.
Oh yeah.
So we were at his studio, and a lot of the guys that work with him were working on that film. So you would go, the kids would be in there, and they'd be getting like their squirrel makeup on, but right behind them, you're seeing like every monster known to man for the last,
He's a Walking Dead guy, isn't he?
Yeah, I think originally, yeah. So he's part of the the Kurtzman, Nicotero, the whole thing. So yeah, we did all their makeup there at that place in Ohio and everything, and it was a lot of fun to see it. But those guys are so talented with the makeup; they can go from gore to beauty makeup to squirrel makeup, and the same guy, So it's always fun working with makeup artists.
Well, it's got to be really kind of difficult, because I was thinking about, a huge, outside of horror, I love sci-fi. So I'm a huge Star Wars fan. And, what's a Star Wars film or even a Star Trek film? I'm a huge Star Trek fan too. I mean, Star Wars, Star Trek are very dependent upon really good makeup artists, I mean, that's what makes or breaks the film. And if it's not convincing, then it really looks tacky,
Well, I think a lot of that, the reason why a lot of that stuff kind of looks tacky now is the problem with a lot of it now is that the cameras have become so high definition.
Yes, yeah.
So
every imperfection.
You're really starting to pull the curtain and seeing the like Wizard of Oz. You're really starting to see behind the curtain a lot, and then you like a lot of times you'll watch TV and you're like, I see them in their makeup. I was like, I can see his latex seams on his nose, and I can see a lot of it has to do with the cinematographer probably doesn't know how to light it well to reduce some of the makeup. The cameras are just so high definition, it picks up everything. But in the old days, and who I learned from, Mac Albert, I mean, he knew how to light women. He knew how to light different shades of skin color. He knew how to light everything. It was an art when he would light. He knew the amount of light they needed, the filter they needed. He knew how to soften, particularly women, how to light their eyes, bounce a little light here, how to give them a certain filter on the lens. And on top of all that, we would shoot it on film. And celluloid's real film is definitely, it gives you a little bit of a softer look than, say, a high-def cinema that you see now. So I think a lot of the effects that you're seeing now can really...
I think a lot of newsreaders retired when HD came out.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, it's true. I mean, I know that they were talking about not ever releasing, was it Deep Space Nine or Star Trek Deep Space Nine on Blu-ray because, or at least with an upgraded high def, because the effects that they used with models, they were using models, not digital ships, and I guess it in high definition, it looks terrible from what I understand.
Oh yeah. Yep. Yeah. I'm involved in a lot of remastering of some of these old films. And once they transfer those negatives over and you see the HD transfer, man, you can tell everything. You can see how they used to superimpose, like the ship will fly across, but you can still see the square around it.
Look, I rewatched the original Dune last night, and when I was a kid and watched it, I was fascinated. Now, as a 49-year-old adult, I watched the original Dune, and I'm like, what in the hell?
I tried that a few months ago. I couldn't watch it.
Right. I'm requesting a remaster on the original Dune. I mean, I know we got the new Dune coming out, but I want a remaster on the original, please.
Yeah. It's amazing what they can do with them, though, when they do get remastered. It is
Sister Murray, Joan, and Father Chris, I don't want to neglect our audience. I'm sure there's more questions that need to be answered. So do you?
There was one really early on that I said I would mention, and so I think I ought to, which is from Rick. Yeah, so he wanted, I mean, he was kind of on the theme of archetypes, but I think I've kind of honed his question in a bit, which I think is, he wants to know if you've had any experience working with bipolar manic depressive themes, like whether it's characters in the show or actors and actresses that might have that. I don't know. So over to you.
Actually, well, the answer is yes. I actually made a movie. I think it's on Prime now, but it's called Patient 7. And it stars Michael Ironside, who was, probably remember from Total Recall. He's the bad guy in Total Recall. You would know him if you saw him. He's been in a million movies.
The original V, too.
V, yeah.
Yes. That's what I know him from.
I love that show.
So Bruce Lee film.
We made this film, it was a few years ago now, but Michael Ironside was the star. I directed it, and I got to direct him, which was great. But he was kind of playing a doctor that would bring these patients in, and each one had some sort of a disorder and or a thing. And then it would go into a short film that was their sort of backstory, and then it would wrap up, and he would do all kinds of stuff to them along the way and to kind of pry them out and stuff. But it was, if you watch it, I think we dived into a lot of that subject matter, into some of that. And, I know some of the people on set told me some personal things, which I won't repeat, but I think people had experiences in that realm. And I think, so yes. And that being in the fictional form but also in the sort of non-fictional real world. Yeah, actors, crew members. I've had all sorts of people on set that we've dealt with different things like that.
I've wondered if it's the actor who makes the monster or the monster that makes the actor. I'm thinking of like Robin Williams, for example. He did
Dreams May Come.
He did many movies.
Yep.
What Dreams May Come is a good example. He did a few movies. Dead Poet Society, another one that deals with the themes of suicide. One of the best movies, actually.
Right.
Excellent film. Excellent.
But both of those movies deal with the theme of suicide, and it's interesting that that's very, I would say, an anti-suicide message in both of them. One, and Dead Poet Society kind of shows the tragedy of it and how it is, how this one action affects so many lives, and
that's
what leads
not
up
irresponsible,
to it.
That's for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then in What Dreams May Come, it's the whole movie is about him going to save his wife from the pits of hell because she can't, she committed suicide and could not recover from the trauma of losing her kids, and so she felt like she had nothing to live for, and so he has to go rescue her from hell. I mean, that's the kind of the whole movie. It has a happy ending, but the fact of the matter is it's these dark archetypes again, and then what ends up happening to him? I mean, he ends up killing himself. Now, granted, there were other things going on there. We do know that he did have a bipolar, disorder. He also had, I think, was it Parkinson's, and
right.
There might have been some speculation that he couldn't live with.
He didn't do well with the diagnosis.
No. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess he's may have seen that, he didn't want to live like that. And I can understand, the thoughts that go through someone's head that could lead one to that conclusion. But what do you think about that, Danny? I mean, do you think that sometimes the roles that we play influence us to such a degree that maybe, again, the archetypes play themselves out through us? Or do you think it's because some of these individuals have been touched by their own traumas and tragedies in life that they're able to be good actors because they've lived it? Or do you think it's somewhere in the middle where it's a combination of both those things?
Well, I know for a fact that a lot of the actors, some of the actors that I've worked with, star actors and stuff like that too, it's just that they've had personal experiences, or they've really been in whatever situation that they're actually portraying. And that's why they're able to bring that part of themselves. Because, a lot of acting is that anyway. They have to bring a certain part of themselves to that character. And they use things like sense memory, things like that they use that to bring up certain emotions, whether it was tragic or whatever it was in their personal life, to get themselves to that point in order to give a very realistic performance.
Right. You get a good method actor, they dive full on in, and they're in character the entire time they're filming.
Although a lot of actors are critical of that. I mean, because they have to put up with it on the set, and so the directors.
Right. Yeah. I mean, some of your best actors are method actors, but it's a very thin line.
That's true. No, they are. The method actors are great, but you have to. That's the thing. You have to understand. If you're a director, you have to understand the actors, because when they come in and they're doing they're in their like method world.
They're in character.
It's weird, man. I mean, I had people that would come into auditions, and they come in and they came in, they did it, and then they slammed the door and they left. And I'm like, what the hell just happened? like what the hell just happened? Like, it was like, oh, and that was he just came in as the character and he left as the character. But if you didn't know that that was his thing, you'd think this guy's a nut, or just crazy, or what the hell was that, or rude or something. So yeah, it happens a lot.
One of my favorite stories of a set was Marathon Man. When Dustin Hoffman. He stayed up for 3 days because he's a method actor. He stayed up for 3 days to play a man that's been tortured for 3 days and kept awake. And he was complaining to Sir Laurence Olivier about how tired he was, because he'd been up for 3 days. And Sir Laurence Olivier said, "Oh, my dear fellow, why didn't you just try acting?"
Yeah.
Well, look at Heath Ledger. I think is when he did the Joker. Some say that he had, I mean, I don't know the whole inside story. I don't know if anyone really does, but some have reported that it affected him adversely, which might have led to perhaps even, the fact that he had an untimely death. there's been others that have had interesting.
Phoenix.
Joaquin Phoenix. He does the method act. Doesn't he do the method acting? He didn't go on like Letterman or something.
Leonardo DiCaprio.
They thought he was having a mental breakdown.
Right.
Yeah. Because he wouldn't leave the character. Yeah.
And I've had actors that I've worked with, been in films of mine that, have had similar ends, and it's sad, but it really sad. And, it can be a tough business on some people, I think.
Well, I would imagine if they're playing a part that they can actually relate to realistically, it may trigger some kind of trauma. And it comes forth, and it's, kind of like having a flashback.
Yeah.
So,
no, you're right.
I know what happens.
Yep, you're right. And I mean, and that it's that sense memory thing that actors use too. Sometimes where they remember that thing, and they're able to bring these emotions. I mean, it can really.
Right.
I've had actors tell me that too. They're like, "Oh, you really mess with my head." The things that when they start really getting deep into that. But that's their craft. That's not a director's craft. That's the actors. They have their own way of internalizing, interpreting things. A way of getting to where they need to be personally. So that's kind of their behind the curtain way of doing it. So, I don't go over and be like, so tell me why you're crying, or anything like that.
Right.
It's nothing like that. That's their person. That's the way they would do it. Great.
That's why it's so important to have a technique to decompress after the scene's over, so they can kind of come back down to reality.
And they need a
splash of cold water in the face.
Exactly. And they need a director who understands that, who's not going over there thinking that they just went off the deep or just went off the deep end or something like, hey, this is an emotional scene. She needs to cry in it. She's crying already. The camera hasn't rolled yet. There's nothing, that's it. And if you go over and talk to the actor, she'll just kind of be like, leave me the fuck alone until I, get to, so
not done yet. Go away.
Things are finally balanced. Don't tip it.
Right. Yeah. So that's no, exactly. So yeah, it's just better to.
How much of that bleeds into your world, though? You mentioned there, and we've talked a lot tonight about the distinction between the perception of the actor versus the perception of the producer, the director, or even the writer. How much of it bleeds into your world, though? Like, have you ever worked on? Let me give you an example. You don't even have to mention which movie it is if there is one. But have you ever worked on a movie that was just the energy was just so negative, maybe from the content of the film, that you just couldn't wait to be done with it, and you were just like chopping at the bit to be like, let's finish, let's make this a wrap. I don't want to. I want to move on. Have you ever had that kind of experience where it affected you and you sort of came home with it?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah. Definitely had just where it was, whether it was people on the set or pressures from things, or just knowing that you're just making the worst film ever, it's probably one of the worst feelings where I'm like sitting like literally on set, like knowing that this movie's going to be a piece of shit, but I have to finish it because I'm here. Right. Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. I've had that for sure.
That's going to be the hardest part. I mean, honestly.
It sucks. No, it sucks. It sucks, but it's part of it. You're trying
then we all have that experience in life, don't we? And especially in, I always think in ministry, it's not often that we let people down, in a very direct way. What I mean is, we generally try our best and generally things work out. But sometimes with some people, not only one thing doesn't work out, everything, you just end up and you go, oh my god, this has just been the worst. I just try, you kind of trying to arrange baptisms with people, and you forget something and they forget something, and it just spirals down and just turns to rat shit, basically. Mm-hmm. And that happens in every walk. I haven't when I was a cop far more. So I don't know. Sometimes in life, you just got to go, look, we're going to laugh this one off because this is just not going to work out.
Yeah.
Well, in my mind, what I was thinking about when I asked the question is sometimes you have to touch on themes in filmmaking that might trigger you inside, as an individual, not not as the director or the producer, but as the individual that you are. And sometimes I would imagine it can be hard if somebody is like an actor is pulling it off so well that maybe it makes it a little too real for you, and now you have to find a way to cope with how these feelings are affecting you in your normal life.
It affects you, absolutely. I mean, when I was early on, when I was directing, I had nosebleeds on the sets.
Oh, wow.
I was extremely under because directing, you're under an extreme amount of stress.
I can't even
entire
imagine.
time.
Yeah.
And so I had nosebleeds. I remember one time. I remember Stuart Gordon was asking, "You okay? You?" I had, gosh, I don't even remember some of the other stuff that had me, but I remember I would get. It sucked, and then over time, you get a little better, and then now, like when I make movies, it's just like, I show up and it's like, the stress is there a little bit, I guess, you're under some pressure, but it's, I remember Michael Ironside, he, on set, because I'm just very calm on set. I don't know, maybe it's just because, you pray a lot or whatever. I don't know. You're just kind of like, yeah, everything's great, So, but I was on set and just all hell, everything's going wrong. They're gonna, the crew people are about to walk because they're, we went over or something, their union, and everything's just going to crap, and all chaos. And I remember Michael Ironside goes, he just kept looking. He looked at me a lot of times during the thing. I think he was trying to gauge me, and he couldn't read me for some reason because he told me later. He looked at me on set and he goes, "Does anything ever bother you ever?" And I go, and I looked at him and I go, "No, not really. Why?" And he goes, he just said, "So when did the therapy start?" He thought I was on some kind of like, he thought I was on drugs. He thought I was
sedatives.
On sedatives because I was so calm during so much chaos. And I said, "No, man, that's just how, shit." He's like, "Well, that's not that guy and this and that." He was just pointing out all the stuff that was going to hell. And I go, "Yeah, I know. And he just looked at me like, "Well, doesn't it bother you?" And I was like, "No, because I know I'm just going to work around it anyway. Yeah. I'm just going to shoot it."
It reminds me of the old veteran cop in the middle of a hostage situation who, there's bullets flying and he's lighting a cigarette out in the open, no cover, saying, "Yeah, we're going to go in and get the son of a bitch in a minute." It's like, exactly. Really, dude? Really? Everybody else is freaking out, but you get the old veteran out there. So I imagine being exposed to this stuff all the time, it does become, like, okay.
I think that's so spot on. I remember an old sergeant I worked with, and he was in custody. He was the custody sergeant because he'd been in like 300 years, and so they said, "Well, you can see your time out in the custody desk." And we brought this guy in who was very violent, and he was very injured when he came in as a result, and all teary, and he said, and he kept pointing at people with his head because he was handcuffed, and he kept, "You're going to lose your job, and you're going to lose your job," and finally he said to the custody sergeant, "You're going to lose your job," and it was all very sort of high pressure, and the sergeant just went, "People have been telling me that for 40 years. It was like the most boring thing he'd ever heard. And people like that make the world go round, so don't change.
Yeah, that's great. That's funny.
Do you ever have challenges between other producers, like when you're co-producing with maybe 2 or 3 other producers that are on set, maybe an executive producers there?
Oh yeah.
I mean, is it? How do you work out? When you have a vision and everyone kind of sees that vision maybe a little bit differently, does it really come down to who's putting in the most money, or how does it get worked out?
Well, that happens. Every movie is like that. Every single one. There's always somebody who wants to put in more input than they need to, whether it's an actor or whether it's the writer or the producer or whatever it is. And, it's a little bit of people skills. It's a little bit of compromise. It's a little bit of just, sort of working things out. Sometimes you have no choice. I mean, I've had producers tell me to put their girlfriends in the film. I had one guy who was funding a film, and he wanted me to put his daughter in the film, which I did. And he never funded the film after that he promised to.
My goodness.
I mean, putting girlfriends in films is a very typical thing. I had before. Hey, okay, maybe she, things like that. I've had producers call me and say, "Hey, I heard you're making a film. Can you do a favor? Can you put this kid in because he's, So no, I mean it's a like I don't know if it's like an old boys club or like an old nepotism thing or whatever it is, but certainly nepotism is very real in the film business.
Well, we all expect to be in your next film, so
yeah.
Right.
Well, it's kind of got reputation. I think the entire industry kind of has an inside, access reputation.
Sure.
It's kind of like who you know, not so much what you know.
That's true. That's very true. It is true. And it's hard to, it's a relationship industry, if I guess I can say. So when you're looking for, it's not something you're just going to get on Craigslist and all the next thing you know, you're directing a film. It's a very relationship based business. And I tell you, if you work with somebody and you get a bad rap or you get a bad reputation, the other people will hear about it, so it's very important to be honest and truthful in what you do and not stack up a bad reputation. Because I've had lots of people that have said, if I want a reference, I'm going to ask somebody. I got a million people I can say, hey, do you know a good cinematographer? Oh yeah, you so-and-so, he's great. But and I get other people say, no, don't use that guy. He's a dick. And he takes 3 hours to light things, or, that sort of thing. So there's a certain pool of people that you pull from, and there's new people too. It's not like nobody new ever comes into that circle. Certainly they do, but there definitely is a pool to pull from usually when it comes to talent, so.
I come from obviously the reality television side, as somebody in the studio world once said to me, it's the fast food of the industry. But it's in reality, the kind of reality television I've done has been more along the lines of like docu-series. It's more like a documentary style. Even Ghost Adventures is very documentary style, which I want to ask you something about Ghost Adventures in a minute. But what's it like, before we get to that, what's it like, because you've done some documentaries, you've produced some documentaries. How is that different than, I'm sure it's dramatically different, but as far as like the directing style and the skill, how do you have to modify what you already know in order to make a documentary work versus like a horror movie or like a children's Christmas show? How do you change gears for that?
Well, it's all storytelling to me. Even reality TV, which, reality shows and documentaries, you still have to tell a story. You still have to keep it entertaining. You got to keep it moving. Nobody wants to sit there for 9 hours and watch some guy, flipping through a book you got to cut out all that stuff. Yeah. I often work on stuff where I'll get a movie or a documentary where it's been edited together and then they want me to re-envision it. And when I do that, a lot of that is reorganization and moving things around and just keeping the things building. And you build it, you take it back, you build it, you create a story out of it, but it's still, whether it's reality TV or a documentary. So, it's very much just like making, a regular picture but I see the people in the documentary as characters, in the edit room, I'm speaking. I know they're real people, but in the editing room. So I say, do I really need to see Joe over there, do that right now? Or maybe I don't have to put him there. I'll put him there later. Or do we need to see it at all because it gives away later? No. So it's the process is very much the same for me personally. Yeah. It's just a different style of storytelling. So, and it's in documentary, it's a lot more cutting out the boring stuff. It's really getting into it a lot faster because they got 3, 4, 5, 6 cameras going and and endless amounts of footage. So it's how do you get all that stuff down to 20 minutes of entertainment and it still get the message across or still get the point across. Especially when you got goldfish people.
right. Yeah.
Right now. So you got to really get it down. And that's an editor job. That's the talent of the editor. And the story, sometimes they have like story consultants and other people that seem to, but usually it's the editor going, yeah, I know how to make that work a little better. It gets things a little faster. So,
well, there's a lot of power to that. No question. I know even from, like I said, my time with Ghost Adventures, one of the questions I get asked the most, or at least the most common assumption, is that it's all fake somehow, and that it's all scripted. And there's of course reality shows that have come out to be scripted. So just because you're on reality television isn't a guarantee that what you're seeing is reality, which puts it to question other shows that do claim to be realistic. And Ghost Adventures does make that claim. And I can say in my experiences, it is absolutely 100% not scripted. I mean, the cameras go on, we go into a case, we very much don't know anything about what we're going to experience when we get there, and they just shoot, and what they get, they get. And I guess, they edit the best parts in, so that's that editing part to make it interesting. But I think what makes Zach Bagans such a success in the world of paranormal television or paranormal reality television is that he's a good storyteller. And you kind of touched on that storytelling is the key. That's sort of like the thing that binds it all together. If you don't have that, you don't really have a good production, no matter what it is.
That's right. And to add on that, because I know we're talking about archetypes too. Yeah. It's all about the storytelling. It's all, whether it's documentary, whatever it is. It's even when I'm doing. I've edited furniture commercials, and it was about the storytelling to me. Because I was like, oh no, you can't show this. You can't show them going down the thing, looking at the furniture first. You have to show this, so it looks more exciting. So it's all about that marketing, storytelling angle. But the storytelling for documentary is so important. We were talking about archetypes earlier, and one of that book I was telling you about, by the way, that one of Stanley Kubrick's favorite books that he read all the time, it was called The Uses of Enchantment. That's the name of the book.
Oh, okay.
And it's called The Meaning and Importance of Fairy Tales, was the sort of subtitle. And it's by an author named Bruno Bettelheim. So if anybody wants to look that up, Kubrick read it all the time. Great book. But he used that he talks all about fairy tales and how and their uses and obviously the archetypes involved in fairy tales.
Well, the Grimm fairy tales.
Yeah, Grimm, exactly.
Stand the test of time.
And but the good stories are the ones that can take those fairy tales and reinterpret those into modern day stories.
Right.
I have a quote I wanted to read you from that book, because I think it'd be really cool. I actually pulled it out.
Yeah, let's hear it.
So this is from the book. He said, fairy tales, unlike any other form of literature, direct the child to discover his identity and calling. And they also suggest what experiences are needed to develop his character further. And I think that really speaks to why we make movies, why we tell stories, whether it's just entertainment or not. But I think, it's
also why we read the Bible, why we have sermons. I mean, that's the, perfect. And because people, have, not so much in America, but certainly, in Britain and Australia, you couldn't even recognize it. Nobody, very few people actually do that weekly, at least once a week, storytelling, retelling stories, reinterpreting stories in the church. They are looking for it elsewhere.
And that's why, in the stories in the Bible, I think that's why besides, probably nobody could read back then, but those archetypes and that a simple concept or a simple truth, I should say, a simple truth communicated to an audience, whether it's a reader of the Bible or a movie, communicated but very simply. And I think
why Jesus spoke in parables, exactly that purpose.
Right, so it stands the test of time and speaks to every generation.
And that's, I think, as filmmakers, that's really what we should be doing, is trying to figure out how to speak to people in those simple truths like that, simple things, and get that across. But I think, I don't know. Sometimes it's just entertainment, and sometimes it can be more serious.
Yeah. What do you? You and I, when we went out to Vegas, Sister Mary Joan, you and myself, and my wife, we went to Zach Bagans' haunted museum.
Sure.
We took that little tour. Yeah, how could you forget, right? And I remember, it was interesting going through that museum with a horror producer and director, because I knew that you would have a unique insight into these things, because everything in there is just so real and shockingly real. I think people sometimes think you're going to go in there and see some of it's a little bit circus sideshow. Some of it's a little bit, the freak show stuff. Some of it's very classic horror. But at the same time, you know, you have real disturbing places like that serial killer room.
Yeah, that was very disturbing to me.
What room did you
know,
hate the most? I mean, out of what was the one? Because I remember you had some moments of discomfort in there. I recall.
That entire place was extremely uncomfortable for me from the time I walked in the door to the time we left. Yeah. I mean, but particularly some of the rooms that were really, really disturbing to me was. I remember the Kevorkian. Well, no, is it the Kevorkian? The van.
The van, the Kevorkian. Yeah, where he killed them.
I just was so depressed and sad in that room.
Yeah.
And then I remember seeing things, and that he had in there. I know that serial killer room.
Yeah.
And seeing the artwork from like John Wayne Gacy's and stuff, and seeing the imagery that was in there, and thinking about the mindset of what this person was thinking when they drew something like this, and it affected me. Like, it just made me, and this is why I don't do these kind of movies, but it was just disturbing to me. It was like you were in his head in that room. And
it's personal. Like, it felt very personal.
Yeah. And that one room where he had the old, like the something that somebody wore, and it was from a crime scene. And I was so uncomfortable in that room. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to get out of that room.
They are relics, aren't they? I mean, in the church, we use relics in the positive. We have relics of the saints that sort of bring us to something good and true and
holy,
and that gives life. Holy, yeah. Whereas, but they are equally relics, but they're not relics of the saints.
And being in that place in general. I mean, even just seeing stuff like Anton LaVey's knives and stuff he used. I mean, it's just there's a certain, I don't know. Look, I'm not an expert in this particular stuff, but there's just a certain emotion that comes over me every time I see that thing, where there's a certain like thing, you know, I feel a certain way. It's like I don't know if it's an energy attached or what it is, but
you're probably a little empathic.
To the hell of it. Yeah. I think empathic might be the word I'm looking for.
I think. Well, I also think you're a baptized Catholic, and I think that gives you some.
Yeah, it would bother you on a deep level.
Spiritual awareness that others perhaps wouldn't have. I mean, the Metropolitan Police Museum is very much like that. You know, and I was in the Metropolitan Police, and you know, they've obviously got things from Jack the Ripper's crime scene thing, all of that, and it's ghoulish. I mean, for me, that's the best word for it. It's ghoulish. You know, and it is what attracts and also repels at the same time.
Well, I had to decompress. Oh, sorry, Brian.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh, I was just going to add that I had after that experience, and we left. I mean, you know, we had holy water, and we luckily after we blessed, you know,
yes,
we had a few other people.
Yeah, we had other people with us that night. Remember?
You know, I even had to decompress that night. I mean, sure. I had to go home, and it was just stuck in my head, seeing these things and seeing these real things, and just like it was almost like you could see what happened at that crime scene in your head. You know, even though it's probably I have a crazy imagination, I know that, but it was almost, I felt like I felt like I really could see what was going on there, but I had to decompress, man. It affected me for a while. I prayed the rosary, no doubt. I felt better after that. And just a lot of prayer and a lot of like, just sort of like, you know, decompression from seeing those things. I would never go back in that place. And then I started to think to myself, even as a movie maker myself, or as a horror movie maker, but not and the fun stuff I do, why I don't do the more serious stuff. And I was thinking about that museum, and I thought about like, I was thinking, is it irresponsible for us as entertainers, as artists, as showmen, to expose people to that, to those sorts of things, you know, or maybe we're just ultra sensitive. I don't know, but
I think that it teaches a lesson. For me, it is very disturbing, and you have to think, you know, why would you put this out on display? Right. But it's a in your face, ugly, truthful reminder of how horrible man can be.
Yeah,
and
I think it might be more necessary than ever.
Right.
Because we have so many portrayals of violence on, you know, in film and TV, as we discussed, you know, and these days it seems, you know, you can't be R-rated enough but I think in some ways, although we're more saturated by that imagery, we're less penetrated by its true effects. And so to see an actual instrument that's been used to torture a person, to kill a person,
right, become desensitized.
I think but I think it's actually quite a healthy sign that a horror director can see that and go, oh my God, that's something very different.
Well, it's
very different than sugar and food coloring on the set. Bananas for brains.
Yeah, definitely not. I mean, it's such a different effect, but Father, you touched on something there, because sometimes people ask me, is Zach being irresponsible by having this museum? Shouldn't these things be destroyed? Because people know me. It's like, they ask me about the Warrens all the time. And how they had they see it in the movie, you see it in Conjuring, where they have all of these relics, negative relics, of these cases they've been on, things that had associations with demonic cases or malevolent activity and things attached, maybe objects that have attachments themselves. And so, they kept all these things. And in the movie, it's pretty much reported that they have to do this to keep these things out of the hands of innocent people. It's a safe way to keep them out. But I'm kind of like, well, we don't collect relics. We destroy these things. When somebody, when we come across a Ouija board that we have confirmed to have had some kind of effect or demonic reaction or something, that thing goes into a holy fire. We don't keep it. We don't lock it away. We destroy it. So sometimes people ask me, is Zach being irresponsible by having this museum? And it obviously affects people negatively, because I've only gone twice now, I think. And both times, once with Danny, one time with Patty Negri and Darren Evans. And I can say, both times we were there were other people in the group. People didn't necessarily know they were going through with, the Exorcist from Ghost Adventures until maybe halfway through, or maybe the tour guide said something and then they knew. But everybody that once they knew, they all asked for a blessing. We always have to bring.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, they do. And so I'm thinking, along the lines of what Father Chris said, that maybe it's important for us to expose people to real evil, because I get to see evil as an exorcist in a way that the average person will never see. I'm not happy about that. I don't enjoy that. I certainly didn't become a priest to do this. I became a priest to do the good things, like marry people and baptize babies, and the things that's what you think about when you're thinking, oh, I got this vocation of priesthood. I can be an apostle. I can kind of do, I can teach people about Christ. But you don't think about wrestling demons and being constantly around darkness and evil all the time like I am. But I think it's really important for people to experience this so that maybe it gives them some kind of spiritual awareness along the lines. Because I think people are a lot more empathic than they realize. And maybe that was the experience it was for you, that maybe you didn't even realize how much this place could impact you. But if it didn't exist, you wouldn't have had that experience. And look at what it did. It brought you home and it started you praying the rosary. And it actually had a positive effect in the long term as you went to God.
It actually de-glorifies violence.
It does. It does.
That's a really good insight you guys had on that. Thanks for that. I see what you're saying, and that's a really good insight, because you're right. I mean, if I wasn't, if I didn't go with you and have experience, I mean, maybe it's that reminder after you're exposed to something like that. That's that reminder that it's time to pray. It's time to strengthen that faith a little bit.
And if you're feeling bad about yourself, you can kind of think, oh, but I'm not that bad. I can be forgiven. I've not gone totally into the pit, and I not that anyone.
A few of us are that bad.
But you think, I'm not that bad after all. Maybe I will just go to confession. It's a good thing.
But I mean, it's like, I'm just thinking, it's like people, we're going out there and asking for blessings. Would these people have ever asked a priest for a blessing under any other circumstance? Probably not. And hopefully they could feel that grace, because I know that, it seemed to have a positive impact on everybody that went to receive it. And that's a wonderful thing. But at the same time, I'll be honest, there's no way in hell, even me with as much experience as I have dealing with evil all the time, I hate it. And the last thing I would want to do is be immersed in it. So I could never work there, because that would just be a terrible, to be around that energy all the time. No, I would not
certainly
want that.
Wouldn't live there.
No, I certainly wouldn't live there. Certainly wouldn't. But you know what, Danny, we're at the end of the show already, and I want to thank you for being with us.
Well, thank you for having me. It was fun.
It goes by way too quick.
It
It
does.
goes by real quick. Oh, yeah. I know.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, before we go, is there any new projects you're working on that you want to tell everybody about? Before we say our goodbyes.
No, not yet.
Not yet?
There's some stuff that nothing.
Still secret?
Nothing I've really announced yet or
Okay.
anything right now. But it's been a little quiet right now. So
Okay. All right.
But, no, there will be. There's definitely stuff going on and happening and all that stuff. So
Well, we'll have you back on and talk about it when you can.
And Bishop,
sure.
he's in our state now. So
Oh, you've moved. You finally have completed the move to Georgia.
Yes.
Fantastic. Well, that's great.
That's
That's
the place
great.
to live, apparently.
so you know what that
Well,
means.
there's a big movie. So yeah, drinky.
Yeah, we have to go get some drinks and cigars,
Have a
or
Guinness.
at the very least, a nice Chinese meal or something.
Right, exactly.
And I know you had some Indian places that you were suggesting out there in Las Vegas, and I just want to say that we've got some great ones here that we can introduce you to.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Oh
Yeah.
no, you talk Indian. You're talking about Indian food. I'm there. Man.
I know that's your favorite one. That's your
Food
favorite
in
one.
general. I'm
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. Well, again, Danny, thank you so much. I really appreciate you spending the 3 hours with us and sharing
I
your.
appreciate you having me.
Thanks.
It's
Great
been
to see you again.
good to talk to everybody. You too, Father Chris. Thank you for
Nice to meet you.
talking
Yeah.
to you. So, okay.
Thank you, Father Chris, Sister Mary Joan, and thanks to all of you for spending this time with us. We hope we got to all your questions, and we'll be back next week with a brand new episode. It'll be Father Chris, Sister Mary Joan, and myself. No guest next week. We're going to be talking about paranormal risks and the real reality of them, and some of these things that we think are games like Ouija boards, and just how serious they can get. So don't miss that. That's next week, Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll see you then. Until then, I'll see you out there in the ether. God bless. Goodbye, everybody.